Okay.
There we are.
We're live.
Oh, all
Apologies.
right. Welcome, everyone. Finally, technical difficulty over. Okay, welcome to the regular meeting of the City of Bethlehem Zoning Hearing Board. My name is Jessica Lee, and I'll be serving as your chairman tonight. Serving tonight are Carol Ritter, who's an alternate member but will be a voting member this evening, Peter Schneck, myself, and to my right is our attorney, which is Attorney Steve Boel, and to his right is our zoning officer, Dave Taylor, and our stenographer is Moira Evans. And anyone in the audience that's going to ask a question or make a comment, would you please stand so that you could be sworn in? Even if you're a witness, anyone asking, talking.
For any matter tonight, for any of the matters, please stand and be sworn in.
Raise your right hands, please. You do swear or affirm that the testimony which you shall give in the matter now before this board shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. You do so swear or affirm. Say, I do. I do. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, our first appeal is a continuation from last month, which is 817, 821 through 823 West Broad Street. Attorney Piparetto.
Yeah. So for the benefit of the audience, this was a hearing that was heard at the last zoning hearing board meeting, and we hit the 10 o'clock cutoff time. And at that point, we concluded one of the witnesses, and we adjourned the hearing with the understanding that we would come back tonight for the applicant to conclude putting on their case, and for any other interested parties that may want to provide comment, for them to provide their comments in advance of the board rendering a decision. I thought it would be helpful if Attorney Piparetto just gave everyone, for anyone in the audience that isn't here, and help get the board their heads back into it. If he can give a quick summary of what was talked about last time, the relief that's needed, and any other pertinent comments. Joe?
Thank you, Mr. Boel. Good evening, members of the board. My name is Joe Piparetto, and I'm here on behalf of the applicant Spinosi 2 LLC. We did appear before you last month and provided testimony from Gary Later, the project architect in this matter, and I will briefly touch upon some of the testimony that Gary had provided to the board members since it's been a month since we met last. As you know, there are two properties involved in this application. One is at 817 West Broad Street. The second property is 821, 823. Both properties are located in the city's CL Limited Commercial District. Multifamily dwellings are a permitted by right use in that district. The current uses of the property, the 821, 823 property is currently a 17-unit boarding house. The property at 817 currently has has had a non-residential use on the first floor and residential uses on the second and third floor. That property currently has 4 electric meters, so it's our belief that there were at least 3 apartments on the second and third floors of the 817 property, and I believe Mr. Later testified to that last month. So essentially, we believe that there are 20 residential living units between the two respective properties. The applicant is proposing to convert 817 into 4 residential units, convert 821, 823 into 7 residential units, and then construct an addition which is attached to both structures, which would contain 7 units for a total proposal of 18 apartments. 14 of those are proposed to be 1-bedroom, 3 are proposed to be 2-bedroom, and 1 is proposed to be a 3-bedroom. You have before you, I believe in your packet, a memo from the Director of Planning and Zoning dated October 23rd of 2024. That memo will indicate to the board and support the testimony of Mr. Later that a number of changes have been made to this plan since it has appeared before the Planning Commission. The density has been reduced from 30 units to 18 units. There is no request for a variance pertaining to density or for lot area per dwelling unit. The 18 units are permitted by right and are permitted under the bulk standards of the zoning ordinance. The height has been reduced from 36 feet 9 inches to 28 feet 5 inches. The impervious coverage has been reduced from 45 spaces to 27 spaces. And the permitted 5-story height has been reduced to 3 stories. We are requesting 4 variances, 2 of them of which are currently in a non-conforming status. The first is on the eastern side of 817 West Broad Street. There currently is required an 8 feet buffer yard. There is currently an existing detached garage and a paving area that is approximately 2 feet and 6 inches from the eastern property line. We intend to maintain that same nonconformity regarding the buffer, and I'll provide more testimony in that regard. The western property line of 821, 823 requires a 15 feet side yard setback. We are requesting a 2 feet variance for 13 feet, and that's consistent with the current structure that is in violation of the 15 feet setback currently. So we are proposing to maintain that same encroachment. The third variance request pertains to parking. Based on the 18 units, the applicant is required to have 27 spaces. We are proposing 24 regular size spaces, which is your 18 feet by 9 feet. And we are requesting 3 compact spaces, which is 16 feet by 8.5 feet. In that, we are having 14 one-bedroom apartments. We believe there will be more than 3 cars, compact cars at the facility, and therefore we are requesting that we be permitted to have 27 parking spaces, which was consistent with the ordinance, but the 3 compact spaces would be a variance request because the ordinance permits compact spaces with 40 or more parking spaces, which this does not have. So it's a partial variance, keep the 27, meet the 27 requirement, but 3 for compact. Lastly, the ordinance requires a commercial use on the first floor, and we will provide testimony as to why we believe that that variance should be granted as well. So those are the 4 variants, and that's just a brief summary of the testimony from last month. May I call my first witness?
Yes.
Thank you. Barry, would you state your name and spell your last name for the record, please?
Barry Cohen, Cohen,
And Barry, by whom are you employed?
Base Engineering,
And how long have you been employed with Base Engineering?
15 years.
Can you pull the microphone closer?
Sorry.
It is my understanding that you are a licensed professional engineer in Pennsylvania.
Yes, sir.
And Barry, how long have you been licensed in the state of Pennsylvania?
Approximately 30 years.
And are you also a licensed engineer in states other than Pennsylvania?
Yes.
And what are they?
Connecticut and North Carolina.
You also hold certain certifications from the ICC, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And would you first identify what the ICC is?
ICC is the International Code Council that develops all the building codes.
All right. And would you indicate to the board members or let them know what areas you are certified in by the ICC?
I'm certified as a commercial building inspector, a commercial building plan reviewer, residential building inspector, residential plan reviewer, fire code level 1, accessibility inspector, and then energy.
Are you also a structural engineer?
Yes.
And have you testified, Mr. Cohen, in front of zoning hearing boards in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania?
Yes.
And have you been accepted as an expert in the area of civil engineering and also in the area of ICC, in which the areas in which you are certified?
Yes.
I would offer Mr. Cohen as an expert in those areas.
The board has no objection. The board will accept him as a witness
Very
or
good.
expert witness.
Thank you. Barry, what I'd like to start with is to draw your attention to an exhibit that was submitted with part of the application package. And that is a page that's identified as L1, which is sheet 2 out of 11 sheets.
Mhm.
And so the board members have that before them. It is up there on the screen. Is that the document that we will be referring to?
Yes, sir.
What I'd like to do is draw your attention to plan left and the top of plan left. There is an area that's identified as a 15-foot side yard setback. Is that correct?
Yes.
And this is to the eastern side of 817 West Broad Street. Is that correct?
Yes.
Is that what we are looking at?
Yes.
And we are not requesting relief from the 15 feet side yard setback on the eastern side of the property. Is that correct?
That's correct.
However, there is a buffer requirement,
Yes.
and that requirement under the ordinance is 8 feet.
Yes.
If you look at the top of plan left where the language of 15 feet side setback is there currently a detached garage located in that area?
Yes.
And is that garage encroaching into the buffer yard?
Yes.
And to the best of your knowledge, can you estimate the age of that garage?
Hmm,
if you know?
I don't know.
Is it that by its appearance, is it a structure that has been there for some period
Oh,
of time?
it's been there for quite a while. Yes.
Okay, all right. And that structure currently encroaches into the buffer yard to 2 feet 6 inches from the eastern property line of 817 West Broad Street. Is that correct?
Yes.
Now, the applicant would like to raise or demolish that detached garage. Is that the case?
Yes.
And remove the concrete pad that is inside of that garage
Yes.
and replace that with macadam to extend the exterior parking area for this facility.
Yes.
And is that area where the pavement would be added consistent with where the detached garage is currently located?
Yes.
Will the paved area encroach any further into the buffer yard on the eastern side of the property?
No.
Now, further down on plan left, there is an area identified as 2 feet 6 inches buffer. Is that correct?
Yes.
And so that the board members are aware, the plan on the left-hand side seems to indicate that there would be some plantings located there. Is that correct?
Yes.
However, we are not proposing to do that.
Yeah, there's not enough room for plants.
And so the applicant has indicated that a privacy fence will be erected along the eastern property line to provide privacy between the property to the east and 817 West Broad Street. Is
Yes.
that correct?
Yes.
And that fence will extend through the entire area that the buffer does not meet the 8 feet buffer requirement.
Yes.
And so is it your professional testimony that the encroachment of the paved area will be no further than what the current encroachment is with the detached garage?
Yes.
And the fact that the detached garage is located there, would you agree with me that that is a non-conforming structure?
Yes.
And have you reviewed section 1323.03 of the City of Bethlehem zoning ordinance pertaining to the continuation of lawful non-conforming structures?
Yes.
And does the ordinance permit the lawful pre-existing non-conforming structure or building to continue at that location?
Yes.
What I'd like to do now is call your attention to plan side right. And about midway down that page, there's an area that is marked 13.0 setback. Do you see that?
Yes.
You would agree with me that the western property line of 821, 823 is required to have a 15-foot minimum side yard setback.
Yes.
What is the building that's currently located there? What is the setback in the field?
It's without talking about the bay window, it's 13 feet, and then the bay window makes it even less.
So that the board members can follow us. The current structure starts at the bottom of the page and extends to the area directly before the proposed new stairwell. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. And it's at that location where the current structure encroaches 2 feet into the western side yard.
Yes.
And that's not counting the bay window, which appears to encroach even further into the side yard setback.
Yes.
Now, looking at the plan and going to the top of the plan, there appears to be an area, and David, I think you had it, that is proposed to be the new stairwell for the structure.
Correct.
Right. And will that stairwell encroach the same 2 feet as the existing building does into the side yard setback?
Yes.
There is no plan to encroach further into the side yard setback than what currently exists with 821, 823 West Broad Street. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And again, under section 1323.03, the area of the building that currently encroaches into the side yard setback would be a continuation of that lawful non-conforming structure. Is that your testimony?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
correct.
Regarding the parking variance, it's my understanding that the ordinance requires 1.5 parking spaces for each residential unit. Is that your understanding?
Yes.
And that therefore 27 spaces are required for this proposal of 18 units.
Correct.
Now, the ordinance requires spaces to be 18 feet by 9 feet. Is that correct?
Yes.
And in this case, the proposal is to provide 24 spaces that are 18 feet by 9 feet and 3 compact spaces that are 16 feet by 8.5 feet. Is that your understanding?
Yes,
And do those numbers include the required handicap spaces, both by Bethlehem ordinance and by other requirements?
yes.
Now, Mr. Later had testified that without the variance for the compact cars, it would be necessary to remove a portion of the building.
Correct.
Now, I had a lot of trouble last month trying to pronounce this word, but I'm going to try to do it again. Porte-cochere? Porte-cochere. And that is the canopy at 817 West Broad Street that currently exists at the property.
Yeah, that goes over the driveway.
And I believe it was the desire of the planning commission and the staff that that canopy, that structure would continue to exist at that location.
Yes.
So explain to the board members what would happen to that in the event that all 27 spaces or the additional 3 that we are proposing to be compact would be 18 feet by 9 feet.
Well, if you look at the drawing, on the middle of the left, you see the handicap spot. So to get the additional spaces, we'd have to have more parking parallel to the ones that are already there, extending down. And then to be able to have access and be able to get around on the parking, it comes down far enough that we have to take out the porte-cochere and possibly redo the driveway as well.
And so we're not requesting a reduction in parking spaces. We're simply requesting that 3 of those parking spaces be compact.
Correct.
Based on your experience as a professional engineer and in the other areas in which you are that you specialize in, do you believe that with 14 one-bedroom parking spaces, that at least 3 cars would be compact in nature? Is that your understanding?
I think that's a reasonable assumption.
And the desire would be not to remove the canopy as been testified to.
Correct.
All right. The last variance that is being requested is the variance that requires that the first floor have a non-residential or a commercial use. Would you testify, please, to the board members regarding the slope that exists in the front of this property?
The front of the property from Broad Street to the floor, it's a pretty steep slope. It's I couldn't tell you exactly, but it's probably 6 feet or more to get up there that you'd have to traverse to get to that level.
All right. Based on looking at the homes and your visual inspection of them, is it your opinion that the homes really were not constructed for non-residential purposes?
Oh, no, they were not.
Now, I believe when we met, you talked about how you would have to, first of all, this property is going to be required to be ADA accessible, is it not?
Yes.
And if any commercial structure were located on the first floor front of the property, which is where it's required, there would have to be an ADA accessible entrance to the property, would there not?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
So would you explain to the board members, is it even possible to make the structures ADA accessible from West Broad Street?
Well, if we say that it's 6 foot grade difference, that's going to require a ramp of 60 feet long. Now the ramp can only be like 20 feet before you have to have a landing. So you're going to need 3 or 4 landings. Each landing is 5 feet. So that's going to add another 20 feet. So you're going to have close to 80 feet or more of ramp. And there doesn't appear to be really any room. It cover up the whole front. There's no room to get a ramp in there. It's pretty much technically infeasible. And the only other thing is you park in the back, but if you park in the back, and then you're losing all the parking for the apartments.
And Mr. Later had testified last month that in the event that the non-residential use was required on the first floors of each of the respective buildings, that would require the porches that currently exist there to be enclosed. Is that your understanding?
Well, the porches are below I believe below the first floor a little bit, so they would have to be enclosed or something would have to be done to destroy what they look like to make them accessible as well.
Okay. You have experience with blighted properties.
Yes.
All right. And explain to the board members how you have that experience.
As a structural engineer, I've worked with the city, the city of Bethlehem, city of Allentown, has called me on numerous occasions to look at buildings within both cities to determine their structural integrity, the assessment of them, and are they fixable or not fixable, to render opinions on that.
And if you are rendering an opinion, is a blighted property a term that's used in the industry?
Yes, yes,
And is it your professional opinion, based on your experience, that the property located at 821, 823 is a blighted property?
when I walked through it, I would say yes, I believe it's a blighted property.
All right. And is that based on your physical inspection of the property?
Yes, sir.
With the board's permission, I briefly would like to go through some photographs in a booklet that I previously handed out this evening, if I may. I believe, Mr. Boel, that all the exhibits we referred to so far were included with the application package. So with your permission, I would mark this collectively as applicant's Exhibit A.
That's correct.
Thank you. All right. Now, Mr. Cohen, I'd like to just review with you some documents that we have in this booklet.
Mhm.
And the first one would be the first photograph in the property. There appears to be a gray structure, and that is 821, 823 West Broad Street. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right. And the slope that you were referring to is depicted in that photograph, sir?
Yes, sir.
All right. And being that the porches are disconnected, so to speak, and located one on the eastern side and one on the left, the western side, it would require those porches to either be removed or significantly renovated in order to accommodate a commercial use on the first floor. Is that correct?
Correct.
The second page is simply the current footprint of the building as it exists on the lot. Is that your understanding?
Yes.
All right. I'd like to go over a couple things on page 3. The first is that under property address, it is identifying this property as 821, 823 West Broad Street, correct?
Yes.
And when you go down to a little bit before the middle of the page, there's a land use. And is that indicated to be rooming house tourist homes?
Yes.
All right. And if we go to the bottom of that page, under type of residence, does it have the same entry?
Yes.
And does it indicate that there's 3 stories to the structure?
Yes.
If you would follow me to the next page of that document, and in particular, the square footage of the structure is just south of 6,000 square feet, is it not?
Correct.
And it's indicated to have been a structure that was built in 1900.
Yes.
Now, if you look below that, in about the middle of the page, there is an entry of total rooms, and would you agree that indicates 22?
Yes.
And directly underneath that, the number of bedrooms is listed to be.
17.
All right. So this property, either currently or prior to this time, has been utilized as a 17-bedroom boarding house, at least by county records.
Correct.
The next page has a picture which I think you can identify as 817 West Broad Street, correct?
Correct.
And again, does that picture depict the slope that you were referring to in your previous testimony?
Yes.
The next page again is simply the footprint of the building.
Correct.
The third page of that exhibit, if you go down to land use, it indicates 2-story converted first floor office apartments above.
Correct.
So that is indicating that the first floor has been used for office space, and that the second and third floors were occupied by apartments. Is that your understanding?
Yes.
And based on your inspection of the property, does the property currently have 4 electric meters attached to the exterior of the property?
Yes.
If you look to the bottom of that page, would you agree that the property was built in 1910?
Correct.
The following page, I simply want you to refer to the square footage. That property is identified as being 4,428 square feet. Is that correct?
Correct.
And right above that, it does reference the detached 2-car garage that we have referenced that currently encroaches into the buffer yard. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, what I'd like to do, I believe there are 10 photographs that are next. And what I'd like you to do is, we don't have to go through each one of them, but if we look through the 10 photographs, these are photographs of 821, 823 West Broad Street.
Yes.
Okay. And as you see the photographs, do these photographs accurately depict the condition of the property as it was when you did your walkthroughs through 821, 823 West Broad?
I believe they do, yes.
And do the pictures depict, in your mind, accurately the current condition of the property?
I believe so.
And based on the photographs and your visual inspection, does it remain your opinion that 821, 823 is a blighted property?
Yes.
And can you confirm that these are all photographs of 821, 823 West Broad Street?
I believe yes.
At the end of the photographs, there is a proposal from Salkin Construction LLC. Now, based on your experience and your license and your registrations, do you have occasion to either estimate or review estimates of construction costs for renovation of properties?
Yes.
And have you had an opportunity to review the proposal that's been submitted by Salkin Construction as it pertains to 821, 823 West Broad Street?
Yes.
And I want to call your attention to the second page of that document. It's hard to see, but it's on the top 1/3 of the property. And is it the opinion of the contractor that the charge for the work that is set forth in the proposal would be somewhere in the area of $625,000 to simply bring it back to a livable condition?
Yes.
With your indulgence for just a moment. Thank you. The applicant did not create the existing nonconformities, correct?
Correct. He did not.
And obviously, the applicant did not create the slope that exists at the front of each of the respective properties.
Correct.
In your opinion, the variance, if authorized, will it represent the minimum variance that will afford relief and represent the least modification of the regulation in issue?
Yes.
And again, 2 feet, 6 inches into the buffer yard on the east side where the current encroachment is, and 2 feet into the 15 feet side yard to the western side of the property. Is that your understanding?
Correct.
And do you believe that that request, the 2 feet into the 15 feet side yard setback, is de minimis in nature?
Yes.
That's all I have for Mr. Cohen. Thank you.
Board, do you have any questions?
Sure. So you have 14 one-bedroom apartments in there.
Mm-hmm.
In your experience, do you anticipate those typically not having 2 cars per apartment? Normally it's 1 car.
Typically, yes.
And then for the side yard setback on the right-hand side, it looks like only the new stairwell is in that.
Yes. Yes, correct.
But the rest of the addition is not. I was just wondering why you couldn't pull the stairs back in, if
It-
there's a reason for that.
It's architectural in that you have to have, with egress requirements and pathways, you have to have so much room. And with the hall being down the middle to get the rooms in the existing, you can't really infringe on that hallway. So that's where we have to pull it out.
So it's actually, you need to put that stairwell where it's located.
Correct.
And then you guys are talking a little bit about the slope of the yards. Are the neighbors on the left, do they have a commercial use? Do you know?
I don't believe it's commercial. It may be office,
Okay.
but I don't believe it's a retail or a commercial use.
How about the right? Is that residential?
I believe that's residential. One of the neighbors is here, and I believe that's residential.
Okay. And then the slope seems to actually decrease a little bit to the left.
Yes.
As you go eastbound, it decreases, correct?
Okay. So that would make sense if commercial ended up going in on that sense.
And as you go down the block, you can actually see some of the areas that are currently offices. You can see that the slope is somewhat less than what it is for these two properties.
And then when you say privacy fence, what is that definition?
We thought about that. I mean, I think when we go through planning, we can, if they want it 4 feet, if they want it 6 feet, I know that he's committed to do a decorative fence. We're not talking about a chain link fence. We're talking about something that would provide adequate privacy and be decorative in nature.
Yeah, that would be whatever the planning commission, would say, this is what we want.
Okay.
Anything else? Have any questions? Okay, are there any questions from the audience? Please approach the,
Probably the first and several questions.
okay. Just give your name and address, please.
I'm Doug Jones. I live at 523 8th Avenue, about 100 yards up 8th Avenue from the location. And I just take a little exception. I know that your code is saying 1.5 parking spaces per resident, but in actuality, that's not the case anymore. We look at the people in this room, and by far,
So sorry, I'm sorry. Maybe we should be clear.
Question.
So there's two things that are going to happen. Right now, it's if you have questions of the witness, if you have a statement you
Okay.
want to make about it later. So if you have questions.
I
for
have
this
a
individual.
question then for the witness. Have you taken into account any pickup trucks in your sizing of your parking lot? You've talked about small compact cars and the normal size and the number of them. Have you taken into account any pickup trucks?
Well, the 24 normal spaces, the normal size spaces would be able to accommodate a typical pickup truck. Yes.
Well, I take exception to that, but that's okay. Maybe you
But
haven't
by
seen-
zoning,
Okay,
it works.
Okay, whatever.
Okay, anyone else? Please approach the podium. Your question.
Lots of stuff, but
Questions at this time
just
only.
on specifically what we were talking about today here.
Oh,
Ma'am.
your name
Oh,
and
sorry.
address.
Yeah, and
I'm
can you just favor before? Can you just bring the mic down a little bit?
Yep.
You're the best. Thank you.
Okay.
Kathleen Russo, 548th Avenue, Bethlehem. My property is adjacent to the 821, 823, starting just about where that stairwell is.
Yes.
And on your original map, you had the corner property and my property. The lots were switched.
Okay.
The ownership names were switched. And the lot line was in the wrong place. Their lot extends 10 feet further than mine. So where that stairwell is, that would be encroaching toward my property. Whereas further up where you see a bump out, that had nothing to do with my property. That had nothing to do with present or former owners of the corner property in 821, 823.
And your question?
I don't think the historic consequences, the historic,
Question for the witness?
no, my question's for you. About
I'm not
requesting-
testifying. The witness is testifying.
Yeah. So
Oh, I'm talking about the variance.
I'm sorry. One more time.
He was saying that the variance, that he's not asking to extend any further to encroach any more than the 2 feet that the building already encroaches. But the area where the building already encroaches 2 feet has nothing to do with my property. Where he wants to encroach now is toward my property. Also, we are still in dispute about where that property line is. His surveyor put in rebar where he believes it is, going by GPS. But my property was subdivided 100 years ago by iron pipes that are still there. One was ripped out recently and is still,
I mean, we'll work out whatever the property lines are. If what you're saying is that somehow the survey is incorrect, that can always be resolved. Again, I'm just wondering what the question is for the witness so that we can help you with
the
that.
question is, this is specifically about the variance. Now, if you want me to wait till later to talk about the variance,
Yeah. So again, I want to be clear for everyone. Right now, it's kind of like a trial, like when you watch on TV
Gotcha.
where someone
okay,
testifies
I thought it was
and then
for
it's
what they said.
cross-examination. And then what's going to happen is when they're done with their witnesses, we're going to allow everyone that wants to make a
Yeah.
comment about the variance, about whatever they want to comment about.
Okay.
You'll have an opportunity to come back up later, but right now it's directly,
Okay, just
like,
the witness,
Questions
not the
for-
yeah,
attorney.
like, and
Okay.
what I would say, if it takes more than 3 sentences to get there, it's not a question. If it, you know what I mean? So if it's, you have a factual question, how did you look at the property line? Is that the property line? If you want to find that out from the witness, ask those questions.
Okay.
But if you want to give testimony about what your understanding is and what you want to
No, no,
present,
I
You'll have a
thought,
chance
I
to
thought
follow.
it was questions on both of their statements today, so far today.
so if you have questions for them, make your questions.
I have questions to the attorney about things he said tonight.
So,
But
so,
no, we should- I
so
should
again,
wait.
there's two aspects. So earlier, what we did was, since there was continuance, there was a witness that testified last time. And solely as to, and you were here last time, I believe. So last time that witness testified and everyone had an opportunity to ask that witness questions. Mr. Piperato was not testifying. All Mr. Piperato was doing was providing his summary
Okay,
of that evidence. Now, by the way, if you have a difference of that evidence, or if you want to make a comment contrary to that, come back up later and present that.
mhm.
If you ask him questions, he's not giving evidence. The testimony and the exhibits are the evidence. Does that make sense?
Okay.
So if you have questions, I'm not trying to push you off. If you have
No,
questions,
no, just
For
just
Mr.
to
Cohen
make it super
only.
clear, because later, I can ask Mr. Piperato.
Mr. Piperato has no obligation to answer any questions at all. So
But I can counter things that he said.
exactly right.
Okay.
Yeah, if you want
Gotcha.
to provide your own testimony about what he said, you can absolutely
And that
do
would be now or later?
later.
Later.
Okay, because I thought we were already on the question and comment.
We're not. We're
It's just the questions
Oh,
right now.
okay.
yeah. So this is cross examination.
Okay, when we ended last month, I thought we ended the questions. Okay.
No,
That's
no,
why I'm
he had one
confused.
more witness. He
Gotcha.
had, and this
Right.
is their last. This is their next witness. When he's done, y'all will have a chance to come up and make your statements and your testimony. And I'm not putting statements, dismiss it, saying statements versus questions. That's important. So if you have any questions, that's where we are right now. Cross examination. Thank you. You'll have your chance.
Okay.
Any other questions for the witness? Not statements, questions. All right, seeing no one.
No further witnesses.
No further witnesses?
Okay.
That's good.
So Joe, any other, oh, sorry.
I mean, I might have rebuttal, obviously, depending upon what, comments are made. And if you need
course.
some specific answers, I can always call Mr. Later back, to answer any questions you may have.
Can I ask a few more questions?
You can.
Yes.
All right.
Okay.
Just, I think we covered this last time, but just to go over it again. What is the alternative if you guys don't get this? What are you permitted to do on these two lots?
On those two lots, we're permitted to put a 5-story building. And everything that is,
And how many units?
We haven't done the calculations,
it's
but it
good,
most
it's
likely
on the
would be,
parking.
it'd most likely be greater than 18.
yes.
Okay. And with a commercial space on the front floor.
That is correct.
Do you have any more?
Nothing further.
Witnesses?
Thank you.
Okay.
So now,
Now-
so now, if you want to come up and provide testimony to refute things, it's not question and answer from Mr. Parado. If you want to give your side of the case and your story, please come up. Sorry, and we didn't mean to make you walk. It's just, there's a process.
Use the practice.
Can you pull the mic down?
Yeah, again, it's just,
Okay.
That whole arm bends. There you go.
there you go.
Okay, now I'm gonna poke myself.
And again,
in
one
the
more
eye.
time, your name and your address.
Kathleen Russo, 548th Avenue. We just stay on this a little bit. The staircase, the stairwell, stair tower. You said that it did need to project off of that corner, and you spoke about that center hallway. Well, you could do the exact same thing by taking that stair tower, flip it, and attach it to 821 as opposed to 823. Have it project out 2 feet the other way. You don't need to come 2 feet my way. In fact, you could move that whole thing down. You don't need 2 feet on this side at any point. From the other side of that addition to the property line, you have 51 feet. My home, including my side porch, is 50 feet long. You have 51 feet there, and you want to move things 2 feet closer to me. Flip it, move it. You're really consolidating those lots, eliminating the need for a setback or buffer yard between those two lots. Then you're spending the square footage from 817, which is the larger lot, but you're spending it at 821, 823. You're shoving everything this way. 14, you keep it separate, you can have 8 units and 10. You want 14 and 4. Your initial plan showed us that 821, 823, the existing 4 footprint, without any addition, had 18 units. You were capable of putting 8 units, the maximum number of units for that lot, within the existing structure. You didn't need an addition at all. You don't want to put 10 units at 817. That's the problem. You never had any attempts to add anything on that property. As far as that porte cochere, there's a lot you could do with that and make it a lot better than it is. You don't have to make the building ugly in order to enlarge it. You know, I showed this plan to someone, and he said, you know, I drive through Bethlehem all the time. I can't picture the buildings that are there. And I showed him the pictures. And he said, okay, I get this one was a rooming house, and now it's going to be apartments. This one, what is that today? What is that building now? Is that a funeral home? And it was because of the porte cochere. Just about all the beautiful historic buildings in this area that have a porte cochere are funeral homes. And now every time I look at that building, that's what I think of. And it's kind of appropriate because that drive is narrow. It's one lane. It's difficult to maneuver. You're pulling out onto Broad Street with parked cars. You can't see to pull out or to pull in. And you're only feet away from one of the most dangerous intersections, the most high number of accidents at that intersection. That's going to add more problems. But I agree, the building is gorgeous. It deserves to be preserved, fixed up, and it can be made better. Now, I bet Mr. Lader can do something much more wonderful with these properties than what he's being instructed to do. I would take that porte cochere, make it into another porch, make it into an enclosed porch. But what I would love is I would ask him, can you make that into a beautiful sunroom? Keep everything that's there, keep the beauty, but make it work today. It doesn't work anymore, not with that traffic. It's just wasted space. If that would be an enclosed sunroom, you could enter from the porch. You could have an addition going back toward Schaefer Street. That could be a 2-story at least. And across the back of 817, that property is not as deep as 821, 823. You have plenty of room to add on back there. I don't know if the developer asked you to think about that at all. I suspect he didn't. And the back of that property is, there's some red brick. There's a little bit of mixing of different red bricks. I don't know what went on there. But a lot of it is siding. And it's siding that can be replicated. And the most beautiful parts of that building, the back of that building and the garage that's going to be demolished, the best features are the windows. And I doubt that you could reuse those specific windows. I mean, maybe you could use them as cabinet doors inside, built-in cabinets. But you could definitely take those windows and have it, use it as a design for new windows. And put just a couple new windows designed to look like the old ones on that back addition. replicate that siding and just make it extended and keep the beauty. You don't have to destroy it, and you don't have to destroy my property by shoving everything as tight as you can to my property. And by having a 522, or is it 562 square foot party deck overlooking my entire backyard for the use for the tenants and their people they invite to be hanging over my backyard. May I show you photos?
You can.
Thank you.
So do us a favor, when you're walking up, hand them up to the board. We can mark them as an exhibit, which means we need to keep them. And just to be fair, don't speak while you're coming up because she won't be able to hear you.
Gotcha.
Okay?
Please give them to our friend ready. Would you like one for the architect?
I would love to see it.
Thank you.
Some of us can share if we need to.
It's planning, I noticed, but they want to let her.
No, I
talk.
understand,
Yeah,
I
I can't
understand.
object to it. But
No, no, no.
I
I'm
agree.
just saying for your
Look what this-
comments,
look what this says.
for your rebuttal.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're good, but city planning staff will provide more comments and recommendations during future planning commission review.
This is.
She's good. Yeah, so we should be fine.
This is the deck. This is her yard.
So you're good. We appreciate you having the copies for everyone. So ma'am, I'm going to mark this as 01,
Okay.
Objector 1, as the exhibit number. So why don't you walk the board through what this exhibit is?
First photograph. Okay, what inspired me to do this was the October 23rd hearing, when 3 of my neighbors got up and they talked about the trees on the borderline and how much they were concerned about the trees and that they hoped that they remained and that the construction vehicles, the heavyweight, wasn't going to kill their roots and kill the trees, and that the trees provided privacy for my property and for the corner property. And I felt, what? And I realized I had to go out and see what she saw. And I went out in the alley and I stood there. And if you're standing in the alley, it looks like those trees would.
I'm sorry. I'm having trouble hearing you.
You-
I'm so
you-
sorry.
You have to stay on that
Can
mic.
you-
Gotcha.
yeah, you could-
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. If you stand in the alley, it looks like those trees would provide privacy. They don't, not to the crucial area. And the first picture is of the back of my home. And on the left is a tree that was severely damaged on June 26th in a storm. And after, I'll skip. That tree has one full living branch remaining, and it reaches out too far toward 821 and toward the alley. It's not providing any privacy from the damaged tree to the 821 property. That whole area is open. The large tree on the right, I'm sorry, that one has 2 branches that are down lower, but they would extend over the party deck. So those will have to be trimmed back or removed. I doubt that he'll keep this tree if he wins that it's his and not mine. And even if the tree remains, which I'd still love to see, the foliage and the branches are all way up over our rooftops. No privacy from them. Now, on the next picture, the second picture there, you can see my dark brown stained fence. Where the white lounge chair is just above, the fence has a horizontal board. And I put a little white metal bird on the fence. That point is 45 feet 6 inches from the corner, the brick corner of 821, 823. There. The addition that he wants to put on there, or the connection, That stair tower plus the addition is 45 feet, 6 inches. So that little bird, that's where 45 feet, 6 inches is. That's how far up it would come. And just above my fence would be stair tower windows facing my yard and my side porch. You don't see my porch back here. Those windows would run across my fence.
I agree.
And then above that, if you see the roof line, if you see the roof line, the fascia of the blue building, that's the height of the floor of the party deck. That deck would run all the way up to the little white bird. The depth of it is half of that twin. That's how big that thing would be overlooking my backyard. You almost made it to the end of my slate patio. I had a couple feet first. And the next picture just shows the same thing. And it also, I wanted to show that I do have seating on both sides. So that's what I'd be looking at. And this property, oh yeah, this last one, you can flip this up and then you can flip it down and see where this would be. So you can see. That's what I'd end up with.
Ma'am, again.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah, address us with the
Yes,
mic.
I'm sorry.
Just trying to make her life easier.
Yeah.
You're good.
So this property is going to have smoke detectors in the units. It's going to have a sprinkler system in the units. People are not going to be able to smoke in their apartments. They're going to smoke out on this deck right there at my house. They're going to be talking. They're going to be partying. They're going to be playing music. Behind them is the wall to the third floor. They've got 15 feet to my fence. And then from my fence to my house is only 12 feet. That's where all the cigarette smoke, that's where all the noise is going to come. The noise is going to be trapped between their building and my house and amplified. I don't know how much damage would be done to my gardening. I don't know how much sun would be affected. I don't know that the board could do anything about that if they remain 15 feet with the majority of the building. I kind of thought in the beginning that maybe the party deck was installed and the apartment was taken off to set the roof back and to give me more sun. But now I don't know if that was the reason. But if my choice was more sun and apartment windows looking at my yard or this entire deck, I mean, it almost seemed like this may have been that the deck itself may have been retaliatory because an investor in this property knocked on my door unexpectedly. And I discussed the situation with him and I thoroughly discussed my two objections. And that is, you're blocking the sun, you're going to kill my landscaping and privacy. All of those apartment windows, all of those stairwell windows looking into my yard, I have no privacy. And what did he do? He put on a community deck. I don't know who came up with the idea of a community deck or how they came up with where to put it. Because you know what? I made some photocopies and I had a scissors and I cut out that party deck and I cut out the apartment that is along that addition. Well, he calls it an addition. I call it a new building. Sorry. That new structure. There's an apartment on the north side. So it'd be facing Broad Street, just about center. You could take that, you could cut that apartment off and cut off that deck and swap them. You could put that deck in the center, facing the rest of his community, facing the rest of his tenants. And the tenants could work together on, is that too loud? Is this too late? Is this acceptable? Is that not acceptable? They could argue, they could figure it out themselves instead of them directing it either toward me or toward my neighbors across the alley or toward my neighbors on the east side. And as far as it facing Broad Street, It's going to be, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot how many feet away. Maybe about 70 feet, maybe. It's far. It's far. Probably even more than that. I have it in here somewhere. But. So that's that part. I don't know if you want to talk to someone else about no, let me talk about this. On October 23rd, the attorney made some, he spoke about the number of bedrooms at the boarding house. And he did it again tonight. And in his application, Exhibit B, he says that the room boarding house had 14 rooms. Then in the second paragraph, he said that it contains 17 bedrooms. He puts a caveat, per County of Lehigh records. How many bedrooms did it have? Did it have 14 rooms and 17 bedrooms?
Per county records.
How many rooms did the building
It
have?
says 17.
I don't care. How many?
What are you asking me the question for?
How many rooms?
So-
How many rooms are in the
The
building?
question, she doesn't
She's
care
not
about my
asking-
answer.
she was pointing out a discrepancy.
How
that
many?
She heard.
yes.
You-
How
you
many
know,
rooms are in the building? Are there 14 rooms in the building? Anybody know? If there's 14 rooms, and I believe there's 2 kitchens. Isn't there a kitchen on each half? I don't know. I've never been inside, thank goodness.
So,
The time for asking questions is
So-
over. We
so-
will help you out.
Okay,
with some of the
okay, they don't,
answers.
okay.
she understands
Okay,
that.
understand. Okay, so I won't ask them questions. I'll just say from my point of view, I don't know. I don't believe it had 17 bedrooms since he put in a caveat that it's per county records. His initial statement saying that it consists of 14 rooms, I think he's more confident in that. And if you subtract 2 rooms for kitchens, that leaves you with 12 bedrooms. Compared to what this new project would have 23 bedrooms as opposed to 12 bedrooms. So where you were comparing apples to oranges, it's not 18 units doesn't equal 12 bedrooms. And I don't know what is the maximum number of adults that could be in these units. Because the boarding house, it would have been just 1 person per bedroom. Maybe that was 12. I don't know. I'm quite confident it wasn't 17.
Ma'am, is that all?
Oh, I have a lot of other things, but I didn't know if we wanted to let somebody else give some
Yeah,
opinions.
so
I could
this
come
will
back
be
and-
your opportunity to speak. So if there's anything
Oh,
else.
this is my only
This
opportunity?
is your opportunity to speak right now. So I mean, if you have any comments, I think the
Well,
board
then I'll have to
understands
go,
what
I'll
you're
have to
saying
go over the other
relative-
things too then.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
If this is the only time I can speak
This
tonight.
is gonna be the only time we're gonna have to speak.
Okay, sorry. I'm gonna get tired of hearing me talk. Okay. Okay, I guess we would just go right over these variance requests. There are PA statutes. I'm sure you're all very familiar with them. I don't know if you want me to read that.
No, the board knows the zoning.
Zach,
knows the
okay.
statutes. Yep.
And there are 5 criteria. Now, where should I start this? One criteria, okay, is unique physical circumstances or conditions. Steep slopes on the north end. I don't see why that translates into needing any type of variance on the eastern or western border. Doesn't apply. Irregular shaped lots. Each property lot is a perfect rectangle. I don't know what's irregular about that. If you put them together, it makes almost a perfect square. So I still don't know what's irregular. He said that the cost to repair and renovate and to make 821, 823 habitable. I'm sorry, but that one upset me. I saw what some of those men went through living there, and they were desperate and had nowhere else to go. But At the planning commission meeting, that was the first I learned that they had code violations for at least 20 years. And then it wasn't until this application that I learned that it was uninhabitable. Those very tenants had told me that after Mr. Andretti took over the property, he raised the rents 25%.
I'm going to object. to
Now that was
relevance.
their, okay,
I mean, I don't mind if she
So
wants to
you're
talk
gonna-
about the property. but this is
cannot
getting
prove it.
ridiculous.
I don't
So,
even
ma'am,
know.
so what happens now
I'll
is he can make an objection to your testimony if he thinks you're violating the rules
Okay,
of evidence. So Joe, do you have an objection?
that
Yeah,
can be,
I mean,
that's fine.
Stick to the facts of, what
I'm
we're
fine
here
with
to
that.
Board for tonight.
So your objection has the relevance
I object to relevance.
as
Okay.
the testimony about the historic rents on the property.
Yeah, I don't know what that has to do
That's
with the
fine with
variance
me.
request.
That's fine.
So what he's saying is that's not relevant to the
That's okay.
variances and,
I under-
and that legal standard. I think I would agree with that. So we'll
That's fine.
sustain that objection.
It's fine. I agree. Now, as far as the condition though being hardship and that he should be granted these variances because of this hardship. If he would have inherited this property in absolutely pristine condition, it wouldn't be 18 pristine units. It wouldn't have eight. It wouldn't have 8 kitchens, 8 bathrooms, 8 laundry facilities. He would have had to tear the inside apart anyway. So the condition is to me, it's pretty irrelevant. The other thing, since he inherited it, if he thought, oh gosh, this place is in too bad a shape, this is too much of a hardship, he could just sold it. He didn't have to spend $1 on it. PA statute number 2, that because of such physical circumstances or conditions, there's no possibility that the property can be developed. The attorney in his application says physical characteristics directly impact the ability to develop. Yeah, it impacts the ability, of course. It doesn't make it impossible. Like I said, he doesn't need the 2 feet. He has 51 feet on the other side. Or he can even just flip that stair tower and attach it to the other twin. They're twins. Put it on the other side.
Oh, right.
In my opinion, when he's considering how many units he wants, he should be looking at 817 where he has the land. Don't avoid building there. And he should be deciding, are there items on that property that he's willing to either alter or give up to have more units? Not how much more can I take away from a neighbor so I can have more units. The variance, if authorized, this is another criteria. The variance, if authorized, will not alter the essential character of the neighborhood or district in which the property is located. And Mr. Piparato says that it would not alter the essential character. But when I look at my neighborhood, I don't see any buildings in my neighborhood that has a 7-unit apartment building in their backyard. There are no 8-unit apartment complexes in my neighborhood with a party deck. And also, he didn't state the full criteria. It also says, nor substantially or permanently impair the appropriate use or development of adjacent property. It would permanently and substantially impair my appropriate use of my property. And it would also decrease the value of my property after I'm gone. Another statute, the variance if authorized, will represent the minimum variance that will afford relief. I still don't see any hardship that needs relief. What I do see, though, is a consolidation of lots, so that he can overbuild on the smaller lot. The property had to be set back 25 feet from Broad Street. He's building another new apartment building on Schaefer Street with a 20-foot setback as required. He eliminated the need for any buffer yard or setback between 817 by doing that consolidation. And then he wants a little bit more on the east side, just a little bit, a couple feet. Every inch of that land that he could use, he's parking on or has a unit on or has both on. Most of it he has both on. Well, 817, you got wide open space. 51 feet. If you took off my side porch, you might even be able to stick it in there and have enough room for a setback. I'd like to know, I don't know, can I ask the zoning board questions or no?
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay, because I emailed questions and didn't get answers on a couple things. I thought maybe I could get answers tonight, but okay, I'll try again. As far as whether this new structure is considered an addition or whether this new structure is considered a separate building and should not be allowed on an alley, if we discuss that tonight, I don't know if there can be a legal opinion made tonight.
Yeah,
Or if this,
so what they're here for tonight, again, you're not supposed to ask board questions, but you're asking a good one that I want to help focus. And by the way, you did a good job of going through what your concerns were relative to the statute and what the board's considering. I mean, you narrowed right in on that legal test that they have to look at.
Thank you.
We appreciate that. So with regard to whether or not there's any other potential requirements under other city ordinances, that's not in front of the board tonight. The only thing the board is considering is for this narrow set of variances relating to the parking, the setback,
Mhm.
for those narrow things,
Okay.
does that legal test that you very aptly summarized, does this meet that? So if you have other concerns relating to other ordinance sections,
Mhm.
that's not relevant to the board tonight.
Okay.
We're just here for those.
At what point do we get to that?
So ultimately, they're going to go through a process called land development, where the zoning hearing board tonight will render an opinion on the variances. After the zoning hearing board renders an opinion on the variances, if they are successful, and I'm saying if, because that's not saying they will be, if they are successful, they will file a next application for what is called land development approval. That's not
To
the
zoning or planning committee?
that goes to the planning commission.
Okay.
So that's not zoning. What happens is when they file that, the city will review that plan. And when the city reviews that plan, and I'm looking at him because he's involved in that process, not that I'm asking him a question. When the city reviews that plan, they will issue a letter to them that may point out issues. It may say the city has concern about X, Y, or Z on this plan. If you believe that there's some legal error with regard to that plan, you can attend the planning commission meeting and you can raise that at the planning commission.
Okay,
Here tonight, all the zoning hearing board is here for is the setback and the parking.
okay,
So thank you, Ms. Chairman. That's exactly right. And the commercial use on the first floor.
okay.
So if you
I
want to
should
speak to
keep my
those
eye
issues,
open for
this
the
is relevant.
next
That's what's
committee
relevant.
planning.
Yeah,
Okay, okay.
good question. And for everyone else's benefit, we want to be clear on what we're here for.
I'll just do a quick check if I have any other little questions. I was wondering,
Again, no questions.
questions.
You're
Oh,
making
oh.
a statement. Yep.
I didn't know if there was still going to be an elevator. Because if there wasn't going to be an elevator, I thought that area could be shrunk and the east side wouldn't have to have such a tiny buffer yard.
So again, you can raise a statement as you're.
That
confused
might
as
not
to
be
whether or there's an
necessary.
elevator. If he wants to address that as a part of their, if they do rebuttal. he can do
Okay.
so.
Guess we'll do this time. May I ask about why the property was reduced from 4 stories to 3?
No, unfortunately not.
Okay.
If they put up another witness, you can ask them questions then, but.
Can I give my opinion of why it was reduced?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Not your opinion,
Um,
but you can
Because
testify.
we
if you
reduce the
understand.
density.
Thank you. When I looked over everything again and again and again, it's like all foreign languages to me. I finally noticed that the Cobb letter, July 3, page 4, item 5, fire code. The proposed building height measures 38 feet. I don't know if that's 38 feet 3 inches or 38 feet minus 3 inches. It says all buildings 30 feet or greater in height must have 26-foot wide minimum access roads. You couldn't keep the fourth floor. You had to get rid of it.
Yeah, so, and again, I mean, I hear,
And
what you're
yet-
saying. I hear what you're saying on
Yep.
that.
Reduction.
Again, that's kind of getting into the area.
Okay, this will be
where-
very brief.
Yeah.
One thing that bothers me is that they knew this from a July 3 letter, and on July 18, presented a proposal for a 4-story building to the planning committee.
We hear what you're saying. We understand that.
Okay. Okay.
You're good? We
I can't come back if something else
Yeah.
comes up.
If he puts on another witness, you can ask more questions. That's the only thing
Okay.
that can happen if he puts on a witness. But
Okay,
as your testimony, and again, I mean, you did a good job of expressing.
Thank
I'm not saying whether or not you'll
I
which way it'll
understand.
go, but we appreciate your comments.
Okay. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. Are there any more comments from anyone else?
Come on up.
I'll make it just a little.
Well, to be fair, it looks like we have more than one person, so let him go and then you can go afterwards. Okay. So. No, you're fine.
I'm stealthy like that.
So again, sir, name and
Name and
address, and
address,
spell your
please.
name if
Oh,
possible.
Fred Chamberlain, 807 West Broad Street.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Fred Chamberlain, 807 West Broad Street.
We can figure out Chamberlain. Good name.
I have no choice.
It's all
I was
good.
born into it.
So
Um,
your statement.
I bought my property. It's a small private practice, counseling practice, 2013. So I've been there 11 years. I bought it because I fell in love with the property and the neighborhood. I love the dynamics of the neighborhood. I understand dynamics change. I understand progress happens. However, that said, there were certain expectations, I guess, that I had moving forward. This wasn't one of them. I don't begrudge anybody trying to make profit, trying to be a successful business person. And I don't know Mr. Andretti, so I have no personal feelings about him one way or the other, but I did have some statements. He was characterized by counsel, I believe, in the last session as a developer who was going to put this.
Sir, can you do me a favor? I just have to come because I don't hear well sometimes. Can you move the mic up just a tiny bit? There you go. Perfect.
Okay, how's that?
Awesome. Thank you.
Great. He was characterized as a developer who was interested in improving that west side property. And there was a statement made, I'm not going to get it word for word, but something along the lines of, well, no other developers would put this kind of financial investment into this property because they wouldn't get it back. Makes sense with this larger project in mind. However, it doesn't feel like a fair representation of the situation because he wasn't a developer who went in and bought the property as an investment. It was gifted to him, which is fine, but it rings a little hollow to me as far as motivation and altruism. I noticed a survey marker, a new survey marker in the back west side corner of my property, and immediately noticed it was quite a distance from my previous expectation and belief of my property lines. So I hired AASA surveyors to come in this week, and they accommodated me, which was wonderful. But the survey matched much more closely to what I thought it was, but not quite. The good news for Mr. Andretti is he inherits my shrubs, which have been a monstrosity and something I'm happy to allow to go. Unfortunately, there's a 12-inch difference between the actual survey that I received and where they've stuck the survey post. I'm assuming it was them. I don't know that for a fact. So it would encroach into my property. And if that 12 inches is part of this request for this variance, if that's going to affect anything, I think that's important for the board to know.
Is he saying it's in his favor?
The garage, as it stands now, has waste materials. I'm guessing the construction or other projects that have been pushed against the property line and kind of coming over onto my property. I've never really made a big deal about it, and I don't really care about it, but it'll be nice for that to be potentially be gone. But I guess ultimately, my concern is for the neighborhood, the visual appeal of the neighborhood, the well-being of the neighborhood, and certainly not completely selfless, my business, and how that I foresee being negatively affected by parking, because realistically, there may be a certain number of spots required. If you have approximately 30 units, there are going to be people and guests, et cetera, parking on the street. I'm not sure if there are certain requirements or limitations for that, but I could see it creating chaos, and certainly would be problematic for me. And then the other issue I had was the construction of this. I called it a monolith in the first meeting. I'm not sure if that was a kind representation, but that was the word that came to mind. The construction of that and the length of time and the lengthy hours that it would take to create this thing would create chaos for the handful of clinicians that I have working there. So I guess ultimately my final statement would be one of, I guess, just wonder. Again, no problem with people having a business. That said, there are certain requirements, regulations, and with zoning in the city, they're there for a reason, many of which I don't personally know, but they're all there, and I've complied with all the ones that including parking tickets and et cetera. Haven't fought them because I was in violation. But I guess ultimately, I wonder why a governing body or representatives of the city, if they can't stop this, why they would allow for variances to be allowed and grant them to make it easier and to allow just a little bigger piece of the pie. Thank you.
So one thing I've got to say, Joe, I mean, if you have any cross-examination, I think we know you're going to redirect. If you have any cross-examination of either of these witnesses?
No,
Okay.
no, Mr. Chamberlain, thank you.
Pretty
Fine,
straightforward.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, sir, you wanted to make a comment?
I'm getting old here.
Take your time.
Yeah, you're good. That was faster than I
Again,
would have done.
I'm Douglas Jones. I live at 523 8th Avenue, about 100 yards from the project. I just want to elaborate a little bit on that. I know your code says 1.5 parking spots for occupancy. However, this is day and age. It is not that way. The majority of the people have at least 2, maybe more. Okay. There is going to be an overflowing crowd from there with family, close family, and the immediate family and visitors and everyone else. And there's going to be overflow parking going on to 7th and 8th Avenue, not Broad Street, 7th and 8th Avenue, which is already plugged up with a church on 7th Avenue. And on 8th Avenue, we've got the Valley Youth Hospital that closes down parking along there. My wife is getting mobility issues. I have to park in front of the house most of the time. It's getting difficult to even park there now without the overflow crowd. The other aspect is we've been talking about access to this parking lot. On the Broad Street area, it's a one single driveway going down there. You can make it a two wide driveway, but it's still a dangerous outlet onto Broad Street. On the south side, we have Schaefer Street, which why we call it a street is beyond me. It's an alley. It's a very narrow alley. Garbage trucks have difficulty getting up and down there. Fire trucks and emergency vehicles, it's going to be really difficult. But the outlet on Schaefer Street going on to 8th Avenue is a blind outlet. It's very dangerous. One of the reasons why it's very dangerous is you get cars parked there all the time. That's not going to be solved. So that has got to be addressed. Now, I have additional safety issues that I'll have to bring up to the Planning Commission, particularly concerning fire access, hydrant placement. You know, there's only two. There's two on Broad Street, one at 7th Avenue on the north side, one at 8th Avenue on the south side.
Sorry,
those-
so you
okay.
kind of self-identified it there, and I appreciate that.
Yes, I've done that.
Yeah,
Okay.
so the planning commission, feel
And for
free
the
to raise.
Planning Commission, also the one on the south side, the only one within a 10th of a mile on the south side is at Market Street and 8th Avenue on the corner. If I were a fire chief, I'd be very concerned about the amount of line I have to run just to get water access to
The
the.
zoning hearing board can't even consider that.
I know, you can't. You should, but you can't. Okay, it will be brought up again at the next
You hear,
planning.
you'll have that chance.
And I will definitely take advantage of that chance. You need to do something about that. I'm an engineer too. I was a project engineer for refineries. We were very, very much involved with safety and very much involved with what if aspect of it. And I don't think you've taken into consideration what ifs in this case, in this design. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Can I ask him a question?
Yeah, sure.
Yes.
Just real
Sir-
quick, sir.
Sir,
Sir,
what was his name?
Yes, if you can go back to the mic, I'm sure one of the zoning hearing board members has a question.
one, I just like to say that I appreciate people from the community having passion about their neighborhood and community coming out. Your main concern sounded, or one of your main concerns sounded about the parking.
Mhm.
Now, you heard them testify saying that if they got rid of the porte cochere, they would be able to meet the parking requirements,
They're meeting the 1.5 parking.
which is
requirement.
the
And that
requirement.
is the required. It's,
So
maybe it's outdated, and maybe I should say the zoning commission ought to.
I do actually think it's
revisit
been
that.
updated.
Yes, okay, and update that because it certainly doesn't apply in this day and age. So that is one aspect of it. Yeah.
Understood.
In that respect, would you if they take down the porte cochere, they're changing the architectural aesthetic of the building.
That's true.
Is that, which would you prefer, the parking or maintaining?
I
The
would
architect-
prefer access to the site. Okay, I would prefer those 26 or 27 cars to be able to safely get onto the site and out of the site. Remember also Schaefer Avenue is an avenue and it doesn't get snow plowed. It's one of the last things in the whole city to get snow plowed. And yet we're having that as our major inlet and outlet to this facility.
So I have to make a decision on parking tonight.
Mhm. Okay.
So in regards to the parking versus sacrificing the historical architecture feature, what would be your preference?
I have a historic home as well. And it's hard for me to say this, but if we have to have this facility here, we need more parking. I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
How we get that parking, I don't care. We need more parking.
Okay, we appreciate
Okay.
that.
Thank you.
Joe, you're good? You, no questions?
No questions.
We appreciate it. All right.
Any more comments?
Yeah, again, man, we said that was, you're right at the apple. It's okay. No, you've read your comment. Any other comments? All right, so what's going to happen now is if,
Do you have any final comments?
well, if Mr.
Yeah,
Piperato
just
wants to
has some
call
brief
witness, so
redirect.
he has the opportunity to do what's called redirect, let everyone know it's going to happen,
I
which
want to
means
provide
that,
some response for the board members to some of the concerns.
yeah, so he can call witness in order to testify in response to that. I want to be clear on something I said earlier, where I said you can ask more questions when they do redirect. So redirect is limited to what they testify to now. So effectively, they're presenting new evidence. As a part of this, if they present new evidence that you have questions about, the testimony is going to talk about now, your next cross-examination has to relate to that. We can't go backwards. The case kind of moves in a funnel. We get smaller and smaller. So Pip, Mr. Piperato,
Okay.
Yeah.
I did pull back the stairs, so I don't know if that's something.
So Joe, do you have any, do you have any redirect? And the board, I think, hopes it's brief.
I have no redirect.
Do you have any closing statement?
I do.
Go ahead.
I may. There is a memo that you received from the Planning Department, Planning and Zoning Department dated October 23rd of 2024 that makes very clear that they will have more recommendations before the Planning Commission regarding this plan. As you well know, we come to zoning first, right? And we seek to get relief because if you don't get relief, either you change the project dies, whatever the case may be. And so we appeared before the Planning Commission once. Many of the neighbors appeared. They had multiple concerns. The applicant went back to the drawing board, consulted with his engineer and his architect, and considerably scaled down this project, considerably. Now, you know me well enough to know that this is not a threat, but when you look at the alternatives for the property, it's a 50-foot high, 5-story building that can meet the setback requirements and can meet the parking requirements and be placed on this property. To Mr. Andretti's credit, he's the one who went into the Planning Commission wanting to preserve these two properties because frankly, his family owned one of them, or his grandparents did, the Spinozis owned one of the properties. And the Planning Commission commended him and strongly suggested that we continue to move forward with all the architectural features of both of the properties. And that's what we're trying to do. We're not reducing the parking. We're simply asking that 3 of the spaces be identified as compact spaces and be built a foot or 2 less in size to accommodate a compact car. We're not asking for the number of the parking spaces to be reduced. People always want to read into the record what qualifies as a unique physical circumstance, but they always delete certain words from the MPC, and it is, or other physical conditions peculiar to this particular property. It's not just narrowness, it's not just slope, it's not just size of the property. The Hertzberg case applies to blighted properties. Everybody want to come before you and tell you that Hertzberg, and I've done it before, Hertzberg applies to all dimensional variance cases. It's based on a blighted property case. And those are some of the physical characteristics that are peculiar to this property that the court found in the Hertzberg property. So we do meet the requirements in the test for a hardship in this matter. In fact, the buffer yard requirement on the east side is already encroached upon. If you want to keep the garage, we'll keep the garage. I heard Mr. Chamberlain say he'd prefer the garage to go. We're not going to encroach any further than what the garage currently encroaches in. On the western side, we're not trying to eliminate the buffer. We'll meet with this. We'll meet with her. She's shaking her head no, she doesn't want to meet with us. We'll talk to her about what we can accommodate in a buffer area that will provide privacy. The deck wasn't put on to hurt her. The deck was put on because everybody who resides in residential housing wants to have somewhere to go on the outside of their property. And when Gary designed this property, he felt that an outdoor area for people to go to was the best thing that we could do for this particular property. So it wasn't because anybody was striking out at the neighbors. It was because we were trying to accommodate some outdoor living on behalf of the residents that live there. So again, we're not asking for reduction in the parking spaces. The encroachments currently exist. We're not trying to go further into the encroachments. The stairwell has already been pulled back as far as it can be pulled back from the original plans that were before the Planning Commission. So that's been pulled back to the 13 feet side yard setback. We can't pull it back any further than that. That's consistent with the encroachments that already exist on that side of the property. And finally, I think Mr. Cohen testified as to the rationale regarding access to any non-residential space in the front of, because your ordinance requires the non-residential commercial space to be on the front of the building. And we've testified as to the impact it would have on the porches that currently exist, and also how difficult it will be, if not impossible, to comply with ADA requirements in order to build the appropriate ramp for access to the property. So I thank you again for your consideration, your time tonight. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, we'll go off the record.
So the board's going to go into executive session, deliberate.
Back on the record.
All right, so the board would like me to articulate this as 4 separate motions. First is a motion to approve a variance to waive the requirement for commercial use on the front street level. Is there a motion on the board to approve that variance?
Yes.
Second, please.
Second,
Ms. Ritter?
yes.
Mr. Schneck? Yes. Ms. Lee?
Yes.
Second is a dimensional variance to reduce the minimum width of buffer yard 8 feet required along the east sideline, approximately 2 foot 6 inches proposed. Is there a motion to approve that variance?
Yes.
Second, please.
Second,
Ms. Ritter?
this is the one with the-
Yes.
yes.
Mr. Schneck? Yes. Ms. Lee?
Yes.
Third variance is a dimensional variance to reduce minimum building side yard setback requirement 15 feet required from western property line for side yard and 13 foot proposed. The board would grant this variance subject to the applicant installing a privacy fence to be approved by the planning commission along the deck at the top of the building to adequately screen the view from neighboring properties or to neighboring properties. Subject to that condition, is there a motion to approve that variance?
Yes.
Second, please.
I'll second.
Okay.
Ms. Ritter?
Yes.
Mr. Schneck? No. Ms. Lee?
Yes.
All right, and then the fourth variance is as to, is that?
Is that the parking?
Oh, the fourth variance relates to the width of the 3 parking spaces as articulated in the notice. Is there a motion to approve that variance?
Yes.
The second?
Second,
Okay.
Ms. Ritter?
yes.
Schneck? Yes. Ms. Lee?
Yes.
A written decision will be issued for the people that spoke tonight in opposition. You will receive a copy in the mail of that decision.
Thank you for your time, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay, guys. We get to go home early tonight.
Not me.
Oh, you have to stay.
That's why.
Thank you.
Makes it all worth it, Joe.
Sure.
I gotta wait one more.
Thanks, Carol.
Hope he's on the third. He's up here.
Hey, happy Thanksgiving. I'll see you. See you next time. Happy Thanksgiving.
Okay, because of that, I don't hate you. Let me know what you need.
What's up, Paige? Good, how you doing?
Okay, our next appeal
Totally.
is that of 1400, 1414, 1416 East 4th Street. And attorney Kevin Kelleher will be our conflict solicitor.
That was not it, but I'll give it to you right here.
Thank you. That's for Steve.
Hi, can you tell us when the property was posted then,
Yes,
please?
Kate Durso here on behalf of the applicant. The property was posted on November 11th, 2024, and here is the proof of posting.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, counsel.
Okay, David, would you read the appeal, please?
The appeal of Penrose LLC for 3 variances to enable a lot line change and development of multifamily dwellings on the reconfigured lots, Lot 1 and Lot 2. Lot 1 to have 60 dwelling units where 56 are permitted, and to reduce the required front yard from 10 feet to 0 feet, and to waive the requirement for commercial use on East 4th Street frontage. Section 1305.01A, footnote 1. Section 1306.01A4, 1318.13A, 1325.06, and all associated variances and special exceptions and interpretations.
Okay, thank you. Okay, you can proceed when you're
Sure.
ready.
I'm going to present the board with an exhibit package. There's 5 exhibits in the packet, and we do have them available electronically for the board.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Little tiny clips tonight. Little tiny clips.
Can you state your name for the record?
Yes, Justin Ryan.
And Mr. Ryan, where do you work?
I work for Lehigh Valley Industrial Park.
And what is your position at Lehigh Valley Industrial Park?
Director of Business Development.
And is the industrial park working with the applicant Penrose on this subject property?
Yes.
And what is LVIP's role in this project?
LVIP will acquire both properties and perform some minor site preparation, including some cleanup and demolition work. Then we will be donating the properties to Penrose.
And who are the owners of the properties?
Stacy Dancho and Jeffrey and Charles Salaji.
And have the owners entered into the agreements of sale with LVIP to allow for this proposal to move forward?
Yes.
That is all the questions I have of Mr. Ryan.
Okay. Any questions?
Why are you doing this? Why are you donating this and doing this?
So we've recognized, working with the city and talking to them, and we recognize the need in the area. And I think it's been pretty well established by not only the municipality, but just it's been written quite a bit about that there is a need for affordable housing in the Lehigh Valley. And so we saw an opportunity to work on a community project and give back to the community.
And this may be outlined further on in your plans, but are these units going to all be designated affordable? And what are the details on that?
So the next witness will be able to testify a
Okay.
little bit more because she is from Penrose.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. That's all. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
No. Any questions?
Oh, sorry.
That's all right. All right, you're good. You're good.
Okay.
Okay.
Can you state your name for the record
Kelly Yan,
and spell your last name?
YAN,
And Kelly, where do you work?
Penrose LLC.
And what is your job title at Penrose LLC?
I'm a developer.
And are you specifically involved in the project that's the subject of the zoning board's consideration this evening?
Yes, I am.
And has Penrose been in existence since 1971?
Yes.
And does Penrose basically work to create secure housing communities where residents can reside and be part of a community?
Yes, we do.
And does Penrose develop and manage high-quality, affordable, conventional planned communities?
Yes, we do.
I'm going to show you what's marked in the exhibit package as Exhibit 1. Is Exhibit 1 a document that shows elevations of and descriptions or labeling of the various projects that Penrose has in the U.S.?
Yes.
And are these all, or correct, is the subject project going to be similar to what's depicted on Exhibit A1?
Yes.
With regard to the properties, as was noted in the notice, they're located at 1400 4th Street and 1414 to 1416 4th Street. Is that correct?
Yes.
And is Penrose proposing to develop the properties with multifamily dwellings?
Yes.
And multifamily dwellings are permitted by right in the CL zone to which the properties are located.
Yes.
Is the intention of Penrose to develop the multifamily dwellings in 2 phases?
Yes.
Is the development in phases done primarily because of financing and tax credits that the project would be entitled to receive?
That's correct. Usually for low-income housing tax credit projects, which Penrose has done a lot of, we see it at 60 units as being sort of the ideal size of the project in terms of securing enough funding for a project like this.
So in this case, Phase 1 is intended to include 60 multifamily units with the required parking for a total of 62 spaces, including the required ADA spaces.
Yes.
And is it intended that Phase 2 would consist of 60 multifamily units with relevant parking, including some ADA spaces?
That's correct.
Can you describe sort of how the credit aspect works into the designating and how you would get those credits?
Yes, so for each phase of the 60 unit project, we will apply separately to Pennsylvania Housing Finance Agency for federal low income housing tax credits, which will then get purchased and get private equity back into the project to construct the buildings, along with some other funding provided by various lenders, including City of Bethlehem in this case. And so the need of a phasing line to physically separate out those two phases are needed because the low-income housing tax credit comes with a deed restriction that specifies in this case, currently it's 40-year affordability period. So that deed restriction will run with the land, which means that, it's important to have a defined and specified area for each phase. And because the phases are done differently, meaning the financing might be different on each phase, it's important that we have a clear definition of each phase in terms of the land.
And it's your testimony that that's necessary in order to get the necessary tax credit and federal funding.
Correct. It will be required by all lenders.
Okay. And then I'm going to show you what's marked in the exhibit package as Exhibit 2. Is Exhibit 2 a copy of the zoning plan that was submitted with the application materials?
Yes.
And with regard to the proposed development and the layout of the buildings, can you take the board first at the corner of 4th and William Street and then kind of go east?
Yeah, so across the two phases, it'll be first a 44-unit mid-rise building at the corner of 4th Street and William Street, and then down to the east along 4th Street Bridge, there'll be another 44-unit mid-rise building, which will be part of phase 2. And then along 5th Street down to the south, there will be two 16-unit walk-up buildings that are 3 stories high.
As it relates to what the one board member asked, could you explain how and how many units and how the affordable housing aspect of the project is proposed?
Yes. So for each of the two 44-unit mid-rise building, they will contain 1-bedroom and 2-bedroom units in them. For the 3-story walk-up buildings along 5th Street, they will all be 3-bedroom units. And for each phase, which is 60 units, at least for phase 1, we will have 46 affordable units, meaning they will be restricted to households earning 60% of area median income and below. And the remaining 14 will be unrestricted to households earning 60% AMI and above.
And while the next witness will go into more detail of the density aspect of it, does the requirement to have the phasing essentially result in the need for the density variance?
That's correct.
Did you have your architect prepare a diagram to sort of give a perspective of the what the elevations of the buildings?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to show you what's marked in the exhibit package as Exhibit A3. It's entitled Massing Diagrams. Can you just explain sort of what they show?
Yes. So there are 4 pages in total. Really, the highlighted buildings are the two 44-unit mid-rise buildings. What we're showing here is at this 4th Street Bridge strategic location, we're trying to do something that is that shows the prominence of the location, and most notably at the building, in the building at the corner of 4th and Williams, sort of a setback design at the ground floor to encourage the interaction of foot traffic and residents in the community. And that is also where we'll have some of the commercial space as well.
And then the other pages just are showing it from different angles of those, again, the 2 buildings that are along 4th Street at the corner with Williams.
Correct.
And in your opinion, will the site be complementary to the surrounding area?
Yes, and in fact, that is what we have been very intentional to do in our design process for the two mid-rise buildings, as I have described, because of their prominent location along the 4th Street Bridge. We want, and the intersection of 4th and William, we want to be mindful of what the building, the size of the building and the scale, and how we can further encourage the interaction of various activities at the ground floor. At the meantime, along 5th Street, where you have mostly residential buildings existing, we are keeping it to sort of fit into the existing fabric of those buildings and have them look more like the existing townhomes, if you will.
And you mentioned before about the city being, invested in the project. Could you explain a little bit of how you're working with the city of Bethlehem on this project?
Yes. So just sort of going back a few years, this location is part of, I believe, the Eastern Gateway Community Envisioning Plan back in early 2010, I want to say, where a lot of feedback was taken on what was to happen on this parcel. Since the involvement of Lehigh Valley Industrial Park, we were actually able to make that vision happen. So throughout this process, Penrose has gone through a competitive RFP process where City of Bethlehem and LVIP had put out, and we were selected as the developer. And ever since then, we have been working very closely with both the city and LVIP. We have regular monthly in-person meetings. We contribute, or we prepare for the press conference. We work together on funding applications to make sure that this happens. And we continue to do so, throughout the zoning process and really the design and development process.
And if the necessary zoning relief is granted, obviously the project will require land development plan approval, which would again engage working with the city planning department and the planning commission.
That's correct.
That is all the question I have of Kelly.
Okay, any questions from the board for Kelly?
Yeah. You had mentioned that the phasing is what triggered the density request.
Yes.
So at the end, when all the phases are complete, would it be compliant?
Yes. Yes. And Mark will testify to that next.
Okay. So at the end of the day,
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. The overall, I'm gonna put words in my mouth. The overall density will meet the requirements. It's just because of the phase line that what we call Lot 1, Phase 1 does not meet the density requirements.
okay. And then you're also asking for a variance for commercial use from the ground floor, but you said there is going to be commercial use on the
Yeah.
ground floor?
So again, Mark will testify in more detail, but the building that is at the corner of Williams and 4th will have commercial on the first floor. But it's not the entirety of the first floor. And the way you read the ordinance, you can't determine how much of that building has to have. So we're going to provide testimony to explain how much we're proposing there. And then the relief then really also then applies to the building that's basically adjacent to the bridge.
Okay.
Because the 4th Street requires it. The 5th Street does not, because it is a local road and doesn't require the commercial on the first floor.
Okay.
Okay, are there any concerns about digging on an old fuel company site?
So that's partly why having the involvement of LVIP, who sort of has a experience in cleaning up those types of sites. So they've been involved in the site cleanup and making sure that everything is going to be compliant. Again, that was why they are one of the partners, because they're well suited to enable the necessary cleanup to occur.
I don't think you are, but is this project utilizing LERTA at all?
Yes, I believe we are in the district.
Not LERTA.
Oh,
It's not LERTA specific, right? I'm looking at Darlene. As far as I know, they're not requesting specific LERTA designation, are you?
I thought we already are in the real estate tax, right? Abatement.
LERTA is a special.
But it's not LERTA. I think it's called
Mm.
It is, but they're not utilizing, the reason I'm asking is because it has a 10-year window for affordability, but you're telling me
This
it's
is
40. So
40
I just
years.
wanted to just
Well,
clarify that.
But if the LRTA applies to the real estate taxes,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
And that abatement, but the requirement for the other funding is specific to a deed restriction because it's federal funding and.
Okay. So the federal
credits.
trumps the local LRTA, basically.
Well, no, but it's applying it for a different way. So like a typical LRTA, you have the abatement based on, once the project is
Right.
constructed, the financing that they're getting, the tax credits requires a specific deed to be recorded that says you're going to use it for those that
Okay.
specific use for the, what'd you say, a 40-year?
40-year
40-year.
affordability period.
Yeah.
Yeah, you answered my question.
I'm
so
sorry. If
that's-
I
it's
went
fine.
around it.
That's fine.
You're good?
Yeah. I have questions about an elevation, but you're going to have another witness for
Yes.
that? Okay.
Okay, are there any questions from the audience for this witness? Okay. Please state your name and address, please.
Hello, my name is Paul Penner. I live on East 5th Street at 1418, approximately across the street from where these low-rise buildings are going. Could you state the definition of a low-rise building for me?
3-story.
Three-story
walk-up,
building,
No elevator.
no elevator. Does the first floor of that have to have any sort of like ADA acceptance?
We will have a portion of those units to be ADA, yes.
Okay. My understanding of the plans is that you have parking in the rear of these buildings.
Yes.
How will people reach the front of the buildings? Is that the main ingress point?
I think I do remember that being one of the design considerations that we will do. That's actually the very point that our architect brought up. So I think as the plan is currently laid out, it will be through 5th Street by foot, but then the parking is behind the building. Does that answer? Yeah.
Explain about the underneath.
Oh,
sorry.
so under those buildings, what you don't see here is they're gonna have tuck under parking. That's under because of the slope. The ground floor that you see from 5th Street is sort of elevated if you look from the back of the building, if that makes sense. And then that elevation difference is where we will have tucked under parking.
Okay, that might go into my second point, but my first point is the ADA accepted parking. Do we have to make the first floor of these buildings ADA compliant?
I don't believe I know they'll be visitable. Is that what you're referring to?
Are you asking the whole entire floor ADA compliant?
Any consideration for any of the buildings along East 5th Street?
If you don't know the answer, maybe
Yeah.
Mark has to answer.
Yeah, if you don't mind, when the next witness comes up, he's a civil engineer. I think he's more positioned to answer that.
Okay, maybe he could also answer my second question. Parking in general for the entire plot. You have the first phase, which is a 44 unit big building along Williams and 4th, right?
Yes.
Part of phase 1 is also one of these two, I guess the left one.
Yes.
The left low rise on East 5th. It looks like in total for your entire lot, based on your plans, you're going to have somewhere between, and my numbers may be wrong, 56 and 72 lots total, including 2 ADA spots. Now, according to your drawing, I'm not sure if that really matches. Am I correct in your parking quantities?
I see 4 accessible shown on phase 1
Okay.
parking.
So is that number presented only for phase 1? The 56 to 72, including 2 ADA?
That's
The phase 1 has a total of 62 spaces, including 4 ADA accessible spaces. Phase 2 has 56 to 76 parking spaces provided, including 2 ADA spaces.
Okay, so I may have misunderstood the documentation I was reading before. It sounds like you're saying there's a total of 4 ADA spaces after phase 2 is complete?
There's at least, no, there's 4 for phase 1 and 2 for phase 2.
Okay, so
But
6
that's
total.
just at least the minimum right now shown on the plan. As they go through the land development plan, if they need to add more ADA spaces, they will do that. Right now, we don't need any relief from the parking because the parking meets the requirements. So the part of the design will be, I guess, vetted more so during the architectural and during the planning commission reviews. But right now, what's proposed for parking meets the requirements. We're not asking for any relief for the parking.
Okay, and so I understand these requirements a little bit better. Previously, on the last case, I know it has no relevance here necessarily, but there was a requirement of 1.5 parking spaces per unit. Could you describe the required parking spaces that are required for the proposed units built here? And is there any difference between the units in any of the units?
I believe that's a question better for the next witness.
Okay.
I'll have Mark answer it.
All right. And I can't ask any questions from the land developer, can I?
You can ask questions of the witness who just testified and no one else.
Okay. I think that's all the questions I have for this witness at this time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Yeah. So again, my bad.
Please state your name for the record
Mark Buckwalt,
and spell your last name.
B as in boy, UCH, V as in Victor, ALT.
And Mark, where do you work?
T&M Associates in our Bethlehem office.
And are you a licensed professional engineer in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania?
I am.
And did Penrose retain your firm to perform engineering services related to the project?
They have.
And did T&M prepare the plan that was submitted with the zoning application that we've previously marked as Exhibit 2?
We did.
Can you describe using A2, can you describe to the board how the site will be accessed first?
Sure. There'll be an access point off of William Street and another access point on Fifth Street, as you can see in the exhibit.
And does the proposed accesses meet the ordinance requirements?
Yes.
And as it relates to the relief that's being requested for setbacks, can you describe to the board where the setback relief is being requested? First along 4th Street.
Sure. So at the, it's generally up at the intersection of 4th and Williams. You can see that we have a 0-foot setback proposed there. The setback requirements apply not just to the ground floor, but a plane that goes pretty much up to infinity. So we would require that relief. It should be noted that although we're asking for a 0-foot setback there, if you see the dark line, that's actually going to be the footprint that's on the ground. And that dashed line is actually building above the first floor. But we still need the relief.
Because the top portion of the
Yes.
building encroaches into the
That's
setback.
correct. And then along William Street, again, you can see the portions of the building that jut out beyond the 10 to 10-foot front yard setback there.
So the further south portion of that building.
And as well as the portion that's dashed that goes up.
And is any setback relief required for the building that's along the bridge?
No.
And then if we go to the buildings along 5th Street, we're seeking, again, a 0-foot setback
That's
variance.
correct. We are just over the setback with the actual building, but some of the porches and stoops go right up to the property line, which is generally consistent with the properties that adjoin the property.
And
In fact, those porches go beyond the property line or in the sidewalk.
And speaking of that, I'm going to show you what we've marked in the exhibit package as Exhibit 4. Exhibit 4 consists of 3 aerial photographs of the subject property. The first one is identifying the property at the corner of 4th and William Street. And if you go to the properties that you just described, are there a series of residential structures that are at the corner of Fifth and William Street?
Correct.
And are they the structures that you are indicating do not maintain any setback?
That's correct. They're up to the property line, and actually their porches and stoops are actually beyond the property line.
And then the next map in that is again a blow up of those properties showing how they're encroaching into the setback.
That's correct.
And then the last photograph of that is just a overall showing the entirety of the property. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And does this also indicate that the property has residential, as Kelly testified, going towards Fifth Street, and then some other commercial and other types of uses as you go towards William Street and obviously towards the bridge?
Correct.
Do the buildings comply with the height requirements?
They do.
With regard to the density, so while the property is located in the CL zoning district, the ordinance requires compliance with the RT density and lot area maximums. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Does this require a minimum lot area of 9,000 square feet and 1,200 square feet per unit maximum density allowed?
Correct.
And as we were explaining to the one board member, is proposed lot 1, phase 1, approximately 1.5434 acres in size.
It is.
Which would result in a maximum permitted unity density of 56.
That's correct.
And 60 are proposed.
That's correct.
With regard to phase 2 being 2.118 acres in size, does that result in a maximum permitted unit density of 76 units?
That's correct.
And 60 are proposed.
That's correct.
So does the overall, if you combine the acreage of phase 1 and phase 2 and the proposed density, does that meet the ordinance requirements?
It does.
And essentially, is the justification or the need for the variance because of the need, as Kelly testified, to creating this phase line for purposes of the tax credit financing?
Yeah, that's correct. So we were trying to, as Kelly testified, there's a need to subdivide both phases. And so it was a bit challenging to draw a line that you could capture enough real estate and meet all the other setback and requirements to come up with the exact area to meet the exact unit count that we need for each property. So, phase 1 is going to be 4 units more than would be allowed, but phase 2 is going to be significantly less than the 170 some that you would be permitted. So the overall property not only will comply, but it'll be less than the density requirement for the overall site.
So would the overall, though, would be a maximum of 132 units would be
That's correct.
permitted, and only 120 units are proposed?
Correct.
Okay. As it relates to the setback relief along Fifth Street, does the ordinance, have provisions to allow for taking into account the setbacks of the adjacent properties?
It does. So those properties, and even the existing apartment units on property today, are right up to the property line.
So what's proposed is similar to what is either existing and or the building that's going to be taken down?
That's correct.
Excuse me. So is the reduced setback keeping with the surrounding area?
Yes.
As it relates to the street level commercial, is it your understanding that there's a requirement for commercial except buildings fronting on local streets?
That's correct.
Is it your understanding that Williams and Fifth Street are local streets?
That's correct.
So the requirement for the commercial pertains to along the 4th Street and then the 4th Street Bridge.
That's correct.
Is Penrose providing approximately 1,200 square feet of first floor commercial in the building at the corner of Williams?
They are, and it's tucked in that
Excuse me.
in that corner of the building that's closest to the intersection.
And is there anything unique about the property that warrants, warrants or creates the inability to have foot traffic as you're going along the bridge?
Yes, so starting at the far end of our property at the bridge, we're approximately 20,
Excuse me.
that's okay. We're approximately 20 feet lower than the 4th Street Bridge at that location. And as you go towards the intersection with William Street, the grade starts to catch up, but you can see there's definitely a separation, not just in grade, but also in guide rail and just the overall sort of use of that as an off ramp versus more of a, pedestrian friendly street. So there's topography, there's guide rail, and it's just not conducive for retail at that location. But where it does start to catch up at the intersection, where we get to the other end of the site, where the other sidewalks and other areas start to converge, we are agreeing and do have proposed 1,200 square foot of retail at that corner.
Okay, I'm going to show you what I've marked in the exhibit package, Exhibit 5. Is Exhibit 5 a drawing with some photographs that your office prepared?
It is.
Can you sort of take the board through the where the various photographs are taken in relation to the site?
Yeah, sure. So I don't know how detailed we want to get, but basically everything I described about the separation between, the site, the grade, and that off ramp. We just took photos demonstrating everything I just testified to. So photo 1 is looking towards the casino up 4th Street going, that would be east. And you can see the grade rising and the guide rail there. The next photo is just another example of that guide rail and the separation between 4th Street and our site. Photo 5 is just a picture of the existing building that'll be removed. And then photo 4 shows how the grade starts to catch up there at the corner. Photo 5 is taken from the site, so you can see exactly how low we are and how separated it would be.
If you were to try to get pedestrians,
Yeah.
yes.
And same with photo 6. It's a similar picture. Actually, 6 and 7 are similar pictures. You can just see the separation, the guide rail, and how difficult that would be and how kind of unattractive it would be to try to bring pedestrian traffic into the site there. And then the last photo again is just one more photo looking east.
So does the grading then differential essentially inhibit providing commercial in the entire first floor of building 1 and then not even being able to put it in the building that's along the bridge?
That's correct.
And then clearly the property sloping is what's necessitating the requested variance relief.
Yeah, the property is has challenges and unique. There's the slope along 4th Street, a lot of grade change, and then we're even pushed back even further. That's one of the reasons why Building 2 is set back so far. Is PennDOT has a slope easement there for the bridge, which we cannot encroach into. So there's restrictions there, and it continues to push the slope easement, the additional right of way that PennDOT has starts to really constrict the site. And then the same thing happens along 5th Street, where we again have this topography that we have to deal with. That's almost a full story lower in the site compared to 5th Street. And then the other complication of the site is how we have this. It's not overly rectangular. You can see that a good portion of the site is a triangle. And that makes it a little bit harder to develop as well.
And then with regard to the parking, is the applicant proposing the required number of parking
We are,
spaces?
as it relates to affordable housing, the city's requirement is 1 stall
1 stall per unit.
per unit.
And is that what's provided?
That's correct.
And right now, they're proposing a certain number of ADA that could change as it goes through the land development,
correct.
but no matter what, it still needs to meet the zoning ordinance requirements.
Yeah.
And as Kelly testified, the project will require land development plan approval, of
That's
course.
correct.
And will stormwater design, landscaping, lighting, and all of that be refined and reviewed by the city during that process?
Absolutely.
Other than the variances that are before the board this evening, the commercial, the setback, and then the density for purposes of the phasing line, does the proposed development meet all other required lot coverage and other building requirements?
Yes. And that information is provided on the plan with all the impervious and other setbacks and building height.
Right, so there's a zoning data table
That's
on the exhibit, site zoning plan that was marked as Exhibit A2
Correct.
provides and confirms compliance with all of those requirements.
Correct.
Will the project be developed in accordance with the comprehensive plan?
Yes.
As Kelly testified to, this is a gateway into the city, and so is it going to be designed in accordance with those requirements and guidelines?
Correct.
Is the proposed use consistent with the spirit, purposes, and intent of the zoning ordinance?
Yes.
And clearly, it's a use that's permitted by right on the
It's a permitted
subject
use.
property. Is the proposed development suitable for the property?
Yes.
Given the uniqueness and physical characteristics of the property and the required financing for the phasing, is there an inability to meet those requirements for density, front yard setback, and commercial use?
Yes.
Will the project be designed and located so that public health, safety, welfare, and convenience are protected?
Yes.
Will granting any of the requested variances create a safety hazard?
No. In fact, I think the use with the residential getting, moving on from the historic fuel oil use, this is more consistent with the surrounding neighborhood. And as Kelly testified, we're kind of taking, we have the parking in the middle of the site, so it's hidden by the buildings. And then we also have, where we're facing the residential, those are more the townhouse looking buildings. And then as we get closer to the corner, that's where we start getting to the larger buildings and the larger massing, which is in character with the surrounding neighborhood going that direction, and some other projects that are being constructed and approved right now.
And is also not having the commercial in the building that's along the bridge better from a safety standpoint?
Yes, if the 20-foot grade change, it's really an off ramp. It's not a typical street.
Not a typical street frontage.
Right.
And then there was a question raised about how the residents will access their the dwelling units. Could you expand upon a little bit of that as far as like the underground parking?
Yeah, so there'll be underground parking in the that'll tuck under back behind. They're kind of dashed in on the plan there.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. And then so when you're looking from the back of those units, you would have the living space above, but down below at the parking lot level, you'd have additional parking that would be under those units. But as you're walking along Fifth Street, they would just look like townhouses.
So for those units that might be designated as ADA accessible, the architect will have to incorporate whatever's necessary in order to make that happen.
That's correct.
With whatever number of ADA accessible units the project ends up with.
Right, and we've even thought about, as we go through land development, considering some on-street ADA parking
Along Fifth Street.
Along Fifth Street, yeah.
And again, that would be vetted during the
During
land development.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
In your opinion, is Penrose requesting the minimum relief necessary to develop these affordable housing project on this a property with these unique characteristics?
They are. I mean, we really worked hard to condense the site and do the best we could to fit what we needed to on the property for the project, for the financing, for the tax credit requirements that we have, and the constraints of the site to minimize the site down to the variances that we're requesting.
That's all the question I have of Mark.
Okay. Any questions from the board?
There are 4 large street trees along Fifth Street. Will removing that setback requirement, will we lose those trees?
As we go through land development, we'll have to do a comprehensive landscaping plan. And if those trees, work with the character and kind of the cadence of the site, or maybe, it's an opportunity to plant new trees and, come in and start fresh with a better cadence and spacing. Right now, we're not planning to take them down, but I'm not saying that maybe once we get further into the project, then we do a more comprehensive landscape plan that we may want to replace them with new trees.
Yeah, those are good old ones.
Yeah. So again, I'm not,
I understand. You
yeah.
can't make a promise right
Yeah,
now on this. I understand. Is there plans? I'm looking at the terrain
Mhm.
where the greenway forms one part of this edge. Is there any plans to create access down to the greenway?
Yeah, if we can make it work, I want to defer to Kelly, so I'm not committing them to something that we can't, but I think it would definitely be advantageous to the project to try to make a connection. That wooded area, there's a swale there, so we would probably have to figure out how to cross that.
Mhm.
But I think that would be a benefit to the residents. And Kelly, I don't know if you feel strongly about that one way or the other. I think the answer is we would definitely investigate it, and I think it would be a benefit to the project, but we'd have to look at the logistics and the details.
And it looks like the phase 2 low rise on the eastern end ends at those two structures that are still there. Is that correct? That otherwise it would have been extended down a bit longer. And multifamily building 2 on the eastern end.
Yeah. So it's
Went to area.
yeah. I mean, I think the architect just planned that. We just planned that out. And that's just because we're trying to maintain the 60 units.
Yeah, those two buildings right there, though, are they going to remain?
The buildings that are on the site today, all the buildings on site are coming down.
Okay, good. So he just didn't extend it out
Right,
longer because
right.
it's just that's the way the project is.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's all the questions
Okay,
I had.
so
Thank you.
I think you already answered it. Basically, the 10-foot setback request is not just to match the surrounding buildings, but you're kind of fighting grade and then easement on the flip side, and you really had to squish everything in.
We did. Yeah, we lost a lot of real estate. PennDOT came out and they actually took additional right of way there than typically would have been on those streets. And again, the slope easement on both sides. It just really took the site and compressed it down.
Okay.
Okay. Anyone have any questions then?
No, ma'am.
Any questions from anyone in the audience? Okay, sir.
Hello, to remind the board, I'm Paul Penner from, I live at 1418 East 5th Street. There is a lot to unpack clearly, and I hope I can try to remember all the points. One thing that resonated recently that I didn't even think of, because it's on your plan to leave the trees behind on East 5th Street, like some of those old oaks there. It must be like 100 years old, nearly as old as the homes on that street. Are you saying that, in your plans where you're trying to, what's the word here? Maybe join in with the general aesthetic of the street. You're saying that if those trees get in the way of your build, you'll just kind of cut them down potentially? And
I'm not
put
saying
in-
that. I'm saying we're going to do a comprehensive landscape plan. And, there may be, as we're looking at that, there might be an opportunity to provide a different cadence for the number of trees, the type of trees, tree wells. But that'll be something we have to work through land development. I mean, those trees are in the city right away, so it would be up to the city if we can cut them down. Even if we wanted, if we want to cut them down, it would have to be the city would have to permit us to do that because they are city street trees.
Okay.
I'm just saying that maybe they're, I understand they're old and all, and I get all that, but sometimes, they start to buckle the sidewalk, ruin utilities, and cause, there's overhead utility lines there. And sometimes, no offense, young trees will grow eventually too, but we're not sitting here telling you one way or the other that we're planning to cut those down. The city would have to allow us to do that if it.
Okay. Trees aside, you're asking for a 0-foot setback on East 5th Street, right?
We are.
And your premise for this is primarily that other buildings on that street have a 0-foot setback.
They're actually beyond that. They're the stoops on the property at the corner actually are into the city's sidewalk.
So this new construction that we're building with current codes, we're basing the variance on the presence of buildings that existed potentially, and I don't have the exact date for those buildings, but potentially have been there for 100 years. We think
So the ordinance allows you to use the average of front yard setbacks of existing front yards on either side of the site to help establish what the appropriate setback would be. That's provided for in the zoning ordinance. It allows you to have existing buildings that are adjacent or nearer to the street than required. You're allowed to take that into consideration when you are requesting the relief.
would you mind rereading that verbatim from your sheet, please?
The ordinance permits using the average of front yard setbacks to establish minimum front yards when there are existing buildings adjacent that are nearer to the street than required.
Okay, so it's not conclusive necessarily that 0-foot setback is appropriate in this case, but it may be
Penner,
considered.
I'm going to stop you there. We've given you some latitude to ask questions, and those aren't questions. That's debate and approaching argument with counsel, and that's not appropriate for what's before the board to consider tonight.
Okay, sir, I'll stop that line of questioning. Another setback question I have is along William Street. You want 0-foot setback, not along the ground level, but I believe at the first floor above that?
There's portions of the building that will be fairly close to the property line, but the portion that's at 0 is actually at a story above.
Okay, is there any plan for the existing power lines along that sidewalk?
Like we said, we're going to be going through land development, and those are all items that we'll have to address. The other thing you have to realize is, where you might think the property line isn't the street or the sidewalk. It's set back pretty far in from the street and from the sidewalk. And then our building is a bit back from there. But as we go through land development, we have to coordinate with not just electric, all the utilities.
Okay.
We've done that in multiple projects where we have to either relocate utility lines or they put different poles out there where they extend the lines out.
Okay. I don't have any additional questions about the 3 proposed variances. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions?
Council, more witnesses?
I have no more witnesses. Formally submit exhibits A1 through A5 into evidence if I may.
And we'll note the package you gave us of the photographs of the posting as a note, not a numbered exhibit.
Correct. Thank you.
Okay, do we have any comments? Comments from the audience?
Hello, once again, Paul Penner, 1418 East 5th Street. So this is my time for comments. There is a lot about this development that I'm not a fan of. I live in this neighborhood, and seeing that this commercial space is going to be taken and turned into, I know you're very insistent that it's going to be affordable housing based on some metric, but it's ultimately for-profit housing, high-density for-profit housing in what is otherwise just like a residential neighborhood. I took it almost as a slight when it was commented that these buildings along East 5th Street were going to, can't say verbatim, but they're going to fit in with the buildings on the street. I live on this street. I don't live in a townhouse. I live in a freestanding home. I don't think these will fit in exactly with my home. I think that these are going to severely. It's the one with the building rubble in the front yard. The rubble's gone now. It's an old. Yeah, that's my house. This building, this 3-story building, which I'm assuming the top floor is going to be a fully built out floor. Like my home is 3 stories, but the top is a loft. It's an attic. It's it's not as obstructive as just a square building right in the way, right on the street. As I have been commenting about, again, this is an old photo. It's a slightly nicer. The rubble. Oh, the rubble's gone. No. Anyway, I've been commenting a lot about the parking because this street, as it stands now, has some parking concerns. It's a residential street, and there's not a lot of room for more vehicles to park. It looks like on your plans you're trying to fit, I believe, a total of 32 units. Now, based on, and I may be wrong here, I think based on the affordability metric, each unit only needs to have one spot, but I'm sure we all understand that many of these units will have more than one vehicle, and there won't necessarily be the parking within your facility to accommodate all of this. A lot of it is, especially because the parking's behind the building. You'll have to take stairs down to the parking lot. A lot of people will be trying to park on East 5th Street. Further,
I want to stop you there because parking is not one of the issues that's before the board tonight. There will be other places and other times to raise these questions, but not here and not now.
okay. Okay, I don't have any more comments about the zoning affordances.
And that's what this board is being asked to determine tonight. The three requested variances, nothing more and nothing less.
Okay, I understand. Well, I thank the board for your time, and I would like you to reconsider the setback along East 5th Street. I think that it should be closer to 10 feet, maybe not the whole 10 feet, but I don't think that basing this setback on the existing structures is appropriate in this case. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any more comments, please? Okay.
I'm Darlene Heller. I'm the Director of Planning and Zoning for the City of Bethlehem. And I don't even know if I'm going to add any additional information, but I'd like to reiterate and support much of what the applicant has presented tonight. We have been working with the developers for some time now. And I will say, I didn't really remember the year, 2010. We did an Eastern Gateway analysis here. This area had been sort of leftover remnant industrial land. We really wanted to create a way to revitalize the area as a new gateway into the city. We spent a lot of time looking at how these parcels could be reutilized. We were really unable at that time to find any reuse for the privately owned parcels, but we were able to do what we had control of. We did clean up a parcel that the city owned on the north side of 4th Street. We did some streetscape enhancements, things like that, some pedestrian crosswalks. But recently, I feel like, the legwork that we did back then was really actually fruitful. Each of the properties on the other three corners of 4th and William are seeing some redevelopment. As you were going through the slides, the one corner has already been redeveloped. You've recently taken a look at the project on the northwest corner of that intersection, and this would be the third parcel of the 4-point intersection. It's a very large parcel. It's almost 4 acres, which is a lot of land for redevelopment in a city like this where we are completely built out. It also takes an industrial use and cleans it up and puts residential housing back in its place. The other pretty large project or a planning project that the city worked on recently is the Opening Doors housing analysis, which really documents the, I don't even know an adjective to use, but the very significant need that we have for affordable housing, not only in the city of Bethlehem, but in the region as well. And this project is really a very significant opportunity for the city to provide some of that. And my understanding is there will be some market rate units and some affordable units, which is good. I think that the more we can mix housing units and housing types and rent levels, et cetera, the healthier development is. We would not be able to do this project, I'll say, without LVIP. Parcel acquisition is really very, very challenging. LVIP has been a partner ever since we did the Eastern Gateway Plan, and so they had quite a bit of knowledge of our goals and objectives for the area. So, and the other benefit to having an LVIP involved is that they've been cleaning up brownfield sites for a while now, a lot of them, and they're very good at it. And so they have the expertise to come in and clean up this parcel efficiently, and they're able to do that prior to turning the property over to the developer. And that's very significant. And so we worked with LVIP also to do some requests for proposals to look at qualified affordable housing developers. We had more than one to review, and we had some pretty good proposals. We're very pleased that we're able to work with Penrose on this project. It's, to my knowledge, the first project that they're doing in the city of Bethlehem, but they're well known for other quality affordable housing projects throughout the region. I would also say that, so what I've been giving you really are not land use reasons to grant these variances tonight, but we do feel like the land use reasons are there. I think it's clear that as far as the commercial storefront, it's really just not feasible. The reason that we created the requirement for a commercial first floor in the CL district is really so that on a street front, you have some activation of the street so that there's some pedestrian interest, so that people want to continue to walk and explore the town. It makes for safer streets. There's a lot of reasons for that. But this really is at pretty much the dead end of that. Once you go over the bridge, you know, there's really no activity on the bridge, obviously. And on the other side, there is no residential development, and it's a very different type of a zoning district. So this is pretty much the dead end of that. And then the grade does fall off as you get to the bridge, and PennDOT does have easement to a considerable amount of that land. So the feasibility of being able to meet the requirement, it's not there. And we support that. They are willing to put something on the corner to activate the corner, which we felt was important, and they are working with us to accommodate that. I would say too, as far as the setbacks go, we do try to match setbacks to the other types of housing that's along a corridor. We want infill development to match what's existing on the street already. And so we didn't really have as much concern with the setback on Fifth. And we did want the development at Fourth and William to really use the corner to build up to the corner, and that helps to activate the corner. So they were trying to work with us on the types of development that we were looking for as a city. When we first started to talk with Penrose, our initial feedback was that we didn't even think that zoning hearing board review or relief would be necessary. And then some things cropped up. There's some additional right-of-way that PennDOT has, the easement area. There's the phasing, so it's going to be subdivided. Those are things that we really didn't know about or anticipate. So we're here, but these are not, it's not relief that was taken lightly. It really is an approach that is the minimum relief that we could see too, for the kind of development that would utilize the site in an effective way, and in a way that we felt was compatible with what surrounds it. So those are just some comments that I wanted to put out there from the city's perspective. And I will say, as the planning director, this project does still have a long way to go. They will have to go through land development review. There are public meetings for that. I'm going to give you my card so that if you want to reach out to me as this progresses, we can keep in touch. I feel like this is just the start, and we will be tweaking things like utilities and landscaping and even building design and elevations. It's a process. So I just want to put that out there as well. If you have other questions for me, otherwise that's all I have tonight.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Eller. Any other comments from the audience? Any final comments?
I'm not going to belabor it. I think actually, I'll reiterate everything that Darlene just said, but I do believe that we provided testimony that the property itself is, creates the basis and the hardship for the requested variance.
Okay. Right.
Thank you,
gentlemen.
counsel. No, we'll
Nothing
close the record.
Okay, we'll go off the record and we'll be back.
Um,
We'll be back on the record here in a second. As soon as the mic, come on, there we are. Okay, we're back on the record.
And counsel, I'm going to indicate, unlike the last case where each of the requested items of relief were taken separately, the board has chosen to address all of your requested variances in one package.
Great, thank you.
So may I have a motion, please, from a board member?
Sure, I'd like to make a motion to approve the three variance requested for the properties and project presented.
Second.
Okay.
Dr. Van Wert,
Yes.
Mr. Schneck,
Yes.
Ms. Lee.
Yes,
Very well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
okay.
My work.
Thank you.
Done. Thank you, everyone.
Yes, thank you very much.
Great to see you all
It's
again.
good to see you.
I'll
Have a nice
look-
Thanksgiving.
You too. I look forward to come back. I'm going to see Pat on Saturday.
Oh,
No,
tell my
Sunday.
son hello.
He and his wife are taking me out for my birthday.
Oh, happy
Also,
birthday.
happy
Thank you.
birthday.
Happy birthday.
Monday. Getting old.
Me too.
Thanks. That's Mark's, yeah.
Yeah, I'm up down at the table. Come on down.
Me again.
Yeah, me again.
So we have an hour until 10. We have 2 applications.
He said this would be quick. I don't know. And I think the last one would be even quicker.
I may just have when did he say it would be quick?
Earlier, you weren't here yet.
Yeah, I'm only a mile
Well,
away.
Mr. Rashidi said it's going to be quick. It's going to be quick.
It seemed pretty warm, you know?
Okay, our next appeal is 416 Selfridge Street. And you can tell us when the property was posted, please?
Yes, the property was posted November 12th, 2024.
Okay. And Dave, if you would be so kind to read the appeal.
The appeal of Austin Saboni on behalf of 416 Selfridge Street LLC to expand the non-conforming student home outside of the student housing and student home overlay zoning district, previously approved for 3 students, proposed for 5. Expansion of a lawful non-conforming use requires special exception for expansions greater than 5% and up to a maximum of 50% of the total floor area measured in aggregate over the entire life of the nonconformity, or 625 square feet permitted, 270 square feet proposed. Sections 1302.48, 1302.49, 1302.54, 1306.01A4, 1323.04, and 1325.07 and all associated variances, special exceptions, and interpretations.
Okay.
All right. Good evening. Just to clarify the record, because the original application is still, I think, pending. The variance request is being withdrawn because the plan has been amended. The variance is not needed anymore. And Mr. Later will testify as to how that was changed, just to keep the record straight. So there was a variance request in the original application. That is not going to be needed now.
Just special exception.
Just special exception. And I believe Mr. Taylor advertised it. I mean, we talked the other week about this, and Mr. Pfeiffer, Mr. Taylor reviewed the amended plan, said, no, the variance isn't needed anymore. All right.
Okay.
All right. So my first witness will be Gary Later. Mr. Later, can you just state your name and business address?
Hi, I'm Gary Later. My business address is 414 West Broad Street, Bethlehem.
All right. And are you a licensed and certified architect?
Yes, sir. I'm licensed in the state of Pennsylvania and New Jersey.
Okay. And were you hired by Mr. Saboni, the owner of 416 Selfridge Street LLC, which owns the property in question?
That's correct.
And you were hired to design a half-story addition in the attic space of the property?
Correct.
And Mr. Taylor, I'm not sure. Did they have the amended drawing?
They should, yes.
To be safe, do you want to mark it as an exhibit?
I have A 2.1.
I'll just pass it out.
Rather safe than sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, there were a lot of
1.1 and
drawings
A
on this.
2.1.
So this will be Exhibit 2, the application being Exhibit 1. Mr. Later, is this the amended proposal for the addition that you submitted to the city?
That's correct.
All right. And just kind of going through this, what is the habitable space of the addition?
An area, you're asking?
Yes, an area.
270 square feet.
Okay. And how was that number determined?
This was determined through calculating all the areas with a minimum ceiling height of 7 feet.
Okay. And you met with Mr. Pfeiffer and Mr. Taylor regarding this calculation?
I met with Mr. Pfeiffer and Mr. Taylor's predecessor.
Okay. I didn't know if Mr. Taylor was involved. I know he's newer. So now this plan is modified from the original plan that was included in the application after you met with the city officials, correct?
Correct.
And the modified plan, just to confirm, has 270 square feet of habitable space.
Correct.
And this modification was done to resolve the potential need for a variance, correct?
That's correct.
So we are not seeking the variance we originally did apply for tonight, correct?
Yes.
All right. Now, the applicant is requesting a special exception to expanding non-conforming use as student housing. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And does section 1323.04 of the zoning code permit an expansion of up to 50% of a non-conforming use measured by floor area of the existing use?
That's my understanding.
Okay. Now, what is the present floor area of the existing use?
Of the ag space or the space below?
The whole, yeah, the space below.
Okay, it's approximately 1,280 square feet.
Okay. And this expansion is approximately 270 square feet, correct?
That's correct.
So is that less than the 50% permitted?
Yes, that's correct.
And that would be about 21%, if my calculations
Yes.
are correct? All right. Does this additional space, or I'm sorry, let me just rephrase that. Does this addition create any additional needed variances?
No,
All right. And has the owner made any additions to the property since purchase of the property?
none that I'm aware of.
Okay. And what is the current use of the property?
Student housing.
All right. I have no further questions for Mr. Later. I'll have Mr. Saboni testify to the remainder of the special exception.
Okay, do you guys have any questions?
Yeah, Gary,
for
you're not
this
done yet.
witness?
I'm sorry.
No, I'll ask
No?
the next witness.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Oh, so I am done. Okay.
All right. All right. So my next witness is Austin Sponi. Mr. Sponi, just to confirm, you were sworn in at the beginning of the meeting?
Yes.
All right. And your name and address for the record?
Austin Saboni, P.O. Box 696, Alpine, New Jersey, 07620.
Okay. And are you the owner of 416 Selfridge Street LLC?
Yes.
And does 416 Selfridge Street LLC own the property at 416 Selfridge Street?
Yes.
When did you purchase that property?
2019.
Okay. Have you had any additions or made to the property since purchase?
No.
What is the current use of the property?
Student housing?
And has it been student housing since purchase in 2019?
Yes, it has.
All right. And that use has been since prior to the enactment of the student housing overlay amendment, correct?
Yes, it's grandfathered in.
All right. And so at present, the use is non-conforming to the current zoning code. Is that correct?
Yes.
And you are seeking to expand that use as permitted by the zoning code.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Do you believe that this expansion is consistent with the City of Bethlehem Comprehensive Plan and other ordinances and consistent with the spirit and purposes intent of this ordinance?
Yes, we're working within the rules set forth to expand the use currently.
Okay. And is the expansion in the best interest of Bethlehem, the convenience of the community, the public welfare, and it would be a substantial improvement to the property in the immediate vicinity?
Yes, given the current student housing on campus and the changes that have occurred over the past years, we think it's very important to expand student housing and provide students with an alternative form of housing, as the options are now very limited given some of the recent acquisitions that have occurred on campus.
And those acquisitions, have they increased rents and made student housing more difficult to obtain for students?
Yes, there's very few people that offer student housing now, and given the fact that it's a monopoly, they're dictating pricing and essentially can control the entire market.
All right. Is this expansion suitable for the property in question?
Yes.
And is it designed, constructed, and operated and maintained to be in harmony with and appropriate in appearance with the existing or character of the general vicinity?
Yes.
Okay. And just describe that character. I mean, this is tucked away little neighborhood up there, correct?
Yes.
And are most of the houses in that area student houses currently?
Almost every single one of the houses on Selfridge is student housing.
Okay. And is this expansion in conformance with all applicable requirements of this zoning ordinance?
Yes.
And you have parking spaces, correct?
Yes.
And how many parking spaces are on the property?
We have several parking spaces currently. We have about 4 spaces as it sits right now in the back of the house.
All right, and there's parking in front of the house too, correct? If
Parking in front of the house, I don't believe is permitted currently.
Okay. All right. Will the expansion of the proposed use substantially change the character of the surrounding residential neighborhood? I think you answered that, but
Yeah.
it won't change it?
Yes, correct. It won't change it.
Okay. And that's because most of the other houses are student houses, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Is the expansion suitable in terms of the effect on street traffic and safety in that area?
Yes.
I don't believe there's sidewalks on front of your property, correct?
No, there are not.
All right. And is there, I think we answered this question, but there's vehicular access arrangements to protect the streets from undue congestion hazard. There's off-street parking.
Yes.
Okay. And will the expansion of the proposed use create a significant hazard to the public health, safety, such as fire, toxic, or explosive hazards?
No.
Okay. And is the proposed use, is it suitable for the site?
Yeah, we're simply adding a half-story addition to an existing structure, so no ground is being disturbed at all.
Okay. So it doesn't disturb any steep slopes, woodland, wetlands, floodplains?
Nope, nothing at all.
Okay. All right. I have no further questions for Mr. Sponi.
And questions for this witness on board?
Yes. I'm actually just looking at this and maybe the viewpoints aren't as understandable, but I don't see any off-street parking for this house. I don't see access from the street or from the rear street. Do you have plans to provide that?
Can I answer?
Yeah.
There is parking. No one's lived at this house for over a year and a half, so the ground is completely overgrown. We maintain it and mow it, but if you look closely back to that picture that you were before in the rear yard,
In the backyard?
in the backyard, if you could bring that back. If you also adjust, you see the date where it says July 2024. If you adjust that date, you'll if you go back a few years, you'll see cars actually being parked there. It's a sure pack substance, but obviously over time with rain and stuff, you can kind of see where the tree fell. You can kind of make the gravel through the grass. It's not, I mean, right now it's not the ideal condition, obviously. But we would obviously fix that up and, make it more suitable for parking as it's eroded over the, year and a half it's been vacant, and we've been waiting to move forward with this project.
And then I have questions just in general about the concept of the student housing overlay, not even the concept, the execution. I wish Ms. Heller was here, because the whole reason that was done was specifically to eliminate the possibility of 5 units of student housing being developed outside of the student housing overlay district. And I understand this does meet, I think it's de minimis is what you're saying.
No, it's this. So this is a special exception.
Special exception. Sorry.
And under, and your solicitor can advise, but under Pennsylvania law, non-conforming uses still have the power to expand, and your zoning code and zoning ordinance has adopted that. And basically, they looked at it as a floor area of the current non-conforming use. And they said you can expand over the lifetime up to 50% of that. And that's in conformance with Pennsylvania case law on the issue. And I don't want to get into technical doctrines and things, and Mr. Boel can if you want, or Attorney Boel can, but it's permitted under Pennsylvania law, case law, and the zoning code just allows it. So because it's zoned, it's grandfathered in, it's licensed as a student housing rental, he can now, when they passed the overlay district, it made it non-conforming. So he could take advantage of the zoning provision code to allow the expansion of that non-conforming use. And that's
I guess that's what I was asking is, does the fact that the student housing overlay district basically state the only place that you can have 5 units in the city of Bethlehem is within that district, does that impact, and I think I'm asking our solicitor and I'm asking our zoning officer, does that impact this decision at all? Is that relevant in terms of how we consider this request?
So I can speak to it in executive session, but why don't you try and address it as the ordinance?
With regard to the ordinance, it is the creation of any new housing has to be within, student housing has to be within the overlay district. But when they created that overlay district, and I wasn't involved in that process, but in general, when you create an overlay district, anything that was outside of it that was existing at the time is grandfathered. Non-conforming is the legal term, as opposed to grandfathering. And as Mr. Raschuti inferred, our ordinance allows an expansion of that, of a non-conformity over the lifetime of its existence at 50%. And we have had conversations extensively internally about this subject and about this property. And yes, the conclusion was that it met the ordinance for a special exception.
Okay.
And just to supplement what Mr. Taylor stated, the provisions of Articles 13.02.127 and 1327, which is the student housing overlay, shall only apply to new student home use commenced on or after the effective date of this ordinance, which I think was March of 2021.
Okay. Thank you.
All right.
That's all my questions.
Yeah. The property that's next to you and across from you, is that student housing?
The property across the street, you will recall, is currently in a continued state from a case that I represented. So those are, I think you're behind it right now. So those are current student housing rentals on that side of Selfridge Street. So that property, the yellow one, there's a house just up the hill from there. I guess it would be the west. That's student housing. And then Mr. Saboni owns several houses kind of to the west of there, and you can explain where.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much if you were to do a 360 from where you're standing right now, everything in sight is student housing. Across the street is owned student housing parking lot. Those houses right there are student housing. That's in contested development is what he was referring to. Up the street on Mead Street in Selfridge right there, that building to the left a little bit more, That's 905 Mead Street. We own that. That's all student housing. Everything to the left of Selfridge, the front, if you turn a little bit more, that's all student housing. The yellow house, the gray, newish looking house with the garage in the front is student housing. Everything there. I mean, you can see the signs if you zoom in pretty closely. It says on the left, on the left in the yellow house, there are signs. You can barely make it. Yeah, you see it says for rent, student housing. Yeah, it's a student housing for rent. So yeah, pretty much everything in this area on Selfridge. I did some research myself. I think there's 1 or 2 homes left that are not owned in an LLC, which by the way could be student housing, but just per my knowledge and what I'm gathering from my own research, pretty much every home on Selfridge is now student housing.
And then in regards to parking in the rear, I know you haven't, was that reviewed? Or is that
I mean,
not
it's
part
been
of-
existing parking. There is a curb cut there. I mean, if you go back to there and you adjust the date, you'll see cars there. I think he had a view from July of 23 where it showed a lot more gravel. I mean, either way, we're gonna pave it over and do something to replicate what the house next door is.
That was going to be my question. So
Yeah.
as a requirement of the approvals,
Yeah, sure, we
you
can
will make
do
sure
that.
that parking is compliant with all
Yeah,
ordinances. And
we're gonna do it anyways, so I don't have a problem making it as a requirement of the approval. So.
Are you gonna put in a pathway from where the parking is gonna be?
I
so
don't.
that
I don't
they
think so.
fall down the hill?
It's not that steep, but I believe there are steps. They were just walking on the grass from the backyard. I don't think. I'm not sure. Again, if it would be impervious coverage or if it would meet any additional requirements, we would have to look into that. I'm not sure if the house next door has a path as well.
Okay.
Yeah,
Looks a little
so-
slopey to me. If I was walking, I would be like this. Okay, and I just
Yeah.
have another question. And since you're building up, is it required that you have an escape stairway? Is that required?
No.
A window for,
Yeah.
and then how do they get down for the 2 bedrooms on that 3rd floor?
It would just be standard egress windows. They're 5.7 square feet each per code.
I mean, do they jump? I mean,
No, in theory, the fire department brings a ladder up and they're able to access out.
I
mean,
know, but if it's an emergency situation, there's no time. Say the fire blocks the 3rd floor. I'm just curious as to what is required with fire code in these student houses.
We follow the same international residential code that applies.
And the other
to-
houses have the same?
Yeah.
It's, we're talking about 5 occupants, and we only require 1 interior stair, and then on top of that, the building code requires the egress windows for emergency rescue, and those are the main
That's your basic,
code
whatever. Okay.
requirements.
Okay.
This house actually has an additional egress at the rear, so it has even further egress means than a traditional home.
Okay.
Nothing
Questions?
for me.
Any comments from anyone? Any more questions? Okay. Any final comments?
I have nothing else. Just move for the admission of my exhibit.
Okay.
They're better.
All right, we'll go off the record.
Thank you.
I get a motion from someone on the board.
I'll make a motion to approve the special exception at 416 Selfridge Street.
Second.
Hey, Dave.
Dr. Van Wert,
Yes.
Mr. Schneck,
Yes.
Ms. Lee.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hopefully you guys get out here quick. One more, right?
I didn't realize the other one was across the street.
Oh yeah,
Oh yeah. It's
When pizza, I was like, well, you guys.
I think I've seen that. I should know if any. Actually, you were. You were on that one.
I was not.
Okay, next is 1273 East 4th Street. Okay, thank you, guys.
I'm here or here? I don't know.
Yes.
Yep.
Sit here.
Here? Okay. I'm not a lawyer. I can't afford it.
All right, just keep the mic close to you and
Okay.
tell us when the property was posted, the yellow card.
Yes. Last week, this Tuesday. What's the day
Last Tuesday?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because Monday you guys are off. I think it's a holiday.
You're okay.
Yeah.
You're fine. You're
I
fine.
post the Tuesday. Pick it
Okay,
up.
please state your name, please,
Jing Lu.
and spell it, please.
Jing. Last name Lu.
Okay.
The appeal of Jing Lu for variances to permit continuation of a boarding use flagged by the Housing Department in a residential zoning district and on a lot with less than the required 15,000 square feet and less than the required 15-yard side yard setbacks. Sections 1304.01B, 1322.03H1 and 2, 1325.06, and all associated variances, special exceptions, and interpretations.
Okay, you can proceed, please.
I bought this property in 2010, and there was a regular rent for allow 5 tenants living in, and
Did you identify yourself, ma'am? Did you give your name?
She did.
Oh, I missed it.
I
I'm
did.
sorry.
I
It's all right,
did.
I had her
Yeah.
spell it.
I missed it. Yeah.
Okay.
You want to do it again?
No, I'm slow tonight. You're good. I'm sorry, ma'am. My
Okay.
apologies.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, keep going.
There was a regular rent until, a regular rent. It's until 2022. And there was a zoning officer, Peggy Stephanie, and she just want to change the property for one family rental. So I just ask for, go back for regular rent because it's very hard for me for rent for one family. The house is a little big and it's small family. They cannot afford it. It's utility, everything very high. I couldn't find any tenants. So I just want to go back for regular rental, not like a boarding house or anything. Just us like before the 2022. It's I have a regular rental for the inspection, the what they call single family detached dwellings, the 5 tenants. I just want to go back the regular rental this property.
Is that the questions?
Oh, I'm sorry. Any questions from the? I was.
So how many people or families live in this house now?
No, just the five tenants live in.
And do they each pay you rent individually?
Yeah, they had one lease, but they divided.
Okay.
Are the 5 people related?
5 people, some are related, some are not.
Can I ask the zoning officer
Well,
what?
I was about when we're whispering. I mean,
Okay.
with the board's indulgence, ma'am, what I'd like to do is we'd like the zoning officer to walk through a few things relative to this.
Okay.
And I'm going to ask him a couple questions.
Thank you.
So can you do the board a favor and walk the board through specifically what relief is being requested? Is it a use variance? Is it not conforming? What exactly is happening here?
My understanding was that Ms. Ms. Lou? Is it-
Yeah.
Yeah, Ms. Lou was requesting the property to be used as a 5-resident boarding house as opposed to, because apparently at some point, I don't know the exact history, but Ms. Lou felt that she was using it as a boarding house, and one of my predecessors switched it to a regular rental house. And Ms. Lou has said she's been unable to rent to.
Now they say that only one family.
Yeah, one family, and Ms. Lou.
I want to go back for regular rental. It's allowed 5 tenants.
Right, so
inside.
which
Well,
would
it
be,
was flagged for that.
it was flagged for that, I guess. It came
Yeah,
up for the
since-
regular rental, it came up for the regular
Right,
rental
come on,
inspection by
regular
the housing
rental.
department.
Yeah.
And the housing inspector went out there and found it was not being occupied by a family of related individuals. It was being rented as a boarding house or a shared residence.
So ma'am, I want to explain to you what's happening right now, because I think we want you to, and you may want to consider potentially ending this for the evening and reevaluating what relief you need. So my understanding, and please, when I'm wrong on this, is you've provided testimony tonight that previously you operated this house as a regular apartment or a boarding house. Yeah, my understanding was it was previously a boarding house.
I don't know the boarding house.
So
It's called a
that's
boarding
important.
house.
So let's explain this. So a boarding house is where people are not related to one another. It's not one family. So if my wife, my children, and I wanted to rent it, that's what we would call, you're using the words a regular rental. That's a regular rental. That's a family. A boarding house was if the zoning hearing board decided we all wanted to live in the same house together. I don't know why we would, but none of us are related. Pete would be a great roommate. But at the same time, we're not related. That would be a boarding house, and that's the
Because
difference.
we would all have our own separate.
We'd all be separate.
But I have the inspection, the number one, that was before they allow me 4 or 5 different unrelated people live in the same house.
So where I'm trying to arrive at, right, is right now, you want the board to approve a boarding house where it's unrelated people.
Yeah, unrelated people that go back the same as the original. When I bought a house, I rent all the
Okay,
year.
so at one point, and again, ma'am, it's all very confusing with the verbiage that's used.
Yeah.
You want to have a boarding house where you want the ability to rent to unrelated people. Is that correct?
Yeah, unrelated people.
Unrelated people.
Yeah.
And my understanding from the zoning officer is that that use is not allowed in this zoning district.
Correct.
So you want what is called a use variance. Okay. Good. So I think we have that straight. Does the board want to go back to the questions now that we and for the zoning officer, to the extent that there's other relief that is identified on here, dimensional variances with a lot less than 15,000 square feet, less than the required 15-foot yard side backs. Those are the dimensional requirements for this district for that use.
Yes.
For a
So,
boarding house use.
Yes. for the
Okay,
boarding
got
house
it.
use.
so all this is because it is she proposes to use
As a
Boarding house.
But I just want to use like a regular rental because regular rental is allowed. 5 people live inside.
it's 5 related people.
Yeah, live inside another boarding house.
Yeah, so
regular.
ma'am, this is what I want to be clear on, and I mean, if it is helpful to you to stop the hearing and to have a conversation with the city to determine this, is if you're saying you are going to rent to a family, and please tell me if I'm wrong on this, you may not need a variance.
I don't want to, because I can't rent it for one family. Nobody wants to rent this big house. It's for one family.
So that's why you want the boarding house.
Yeah. No, I just want to go back original. I bought this house 2010 until, always regular rent. It's no problem.
So, and let me explain my understanding. Oh, go ahead.
I think because you said the verbiage earlier, I believe prior to the student housing ordinance and the overlay district and all created, the housing was administered through the regular rental unit ordinance, which was outside of the zoning ordinance. So she's referring to it as a regular
Oh,
rental
Okay.
under the zoning ordinance. When that regular rental, you bring that regular rental into the zoning ordinance,
That makes sense.
it becomes a
Boarding
boarding
house.
house.
Right.
So she's, I believe historically, she's used to dealing with the housing department,
Right.
and they called that a regular rental.
Got it.
So that makes sense. So let me explain something, ma'am. So
Okay.
although before you were using it as a boarding house, that boarding house at some point was converted into, or has it always been has it always been unrelated people? It's always been unrelated people?
Mm.
How long back, until 2010? How long before that was it unrelated people? Do you know?
I use since 2010 rent every year. I don't have any problem until 2022. And the zoning office, the one inspector said that, you cannot rent for that. You have to rent for one family only.
So I'm going to ask the zoning officer this question. So at the time in 2010, when
20,
the applicant was
yeah, 12
acquired the
years.
property
Yeah.
and was using it
For 12 years.
She's gonna have a hard time typing. Let me ask her. So at the time in 2010, the unrelated people, the rental at that time was lawful, correct?
2010, I believe it would have been lawful, yes.
And ma'am, you're testifying that use has remained continuous since then. You've always rented to unrelated people.
Yes.
But in 2023, it's listed as a single-family home.
That was not. So in 2020, so right now,
Under the number 2 paper.
right now we're looking at this, and this is the zoning officer at the time, Paige. She emailed you and she said that that you could only use the property as a single family home.
Yeah, she emailed me, but I don't know. I never changed a house or anything, but I tried. I kicked everybody out. I tried rent for one family, but the house was empty for 6 months. I can't get anyone. So
The city's position currently is that since that position was taken in that email by your predecessor in March of 2023, that is what that's what caused the need for here.
Correct, and that is what is in the computer. That's what it reads as a single-family dwelling.
And has the
For that time period.
and
So it's been a single-family home.
yeah, what I'm
For-
trying.
Yes.
2
that-
years,
yes,
essentially.
2 years it was
And she
classified
wants to
as-
go back to
two.
listing it as a boarding house.
But ma'am,
it's not
over
allowed.
that 2 years, did you use it as a boarding house or did you use it as a single family residence?
not single family. I still have a couple of tenants there.
The boarding house use has been continuous over that time.
Yeah.
So this, yeah, so where I'm going with this is, ma'am,
I understand.
Ma'am, I think what I would recommend, and I know you said affording an attorney, I would recommend you speak with an attorney. You have the right, if you want to say you want to adjourn the hearing now and go talk to an attorney, you can do so. Because what you applied for is a variance. Is you are requesting the zoning hearing board to evaluate that legal standard you've heard so much about tonight. Is there a physical hardship with the property? Is that hardship unusual? Was that hardship created by you? Is there going to be any adverse impact on the community? There may be other legal remedies that you could have considered, but you filed the application for the variance. So if you want to talk to an attorney and come back with an attorney, you can do so. Or if you'd like to move forward just with the evidence as you've presented it, you can also do that.
Because I talked to some attorney, they said they will start like between 2,000 to 5,000 fee, like
I understand
that.
that.
And
Okay. So ma'am, for the variance, you testified that the house is unusually large. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's a pretty high ceiling. It's also,
So how many bedrooms are in the house?
it's 2 on the first floor, 3 on the, all big room.
So there's
Five.
there's 5 bedrooms in the
Yes.
house,
Mm.
a single kitchen, is that right?
Single kitchen, yeah.
How many square feet is the house?
I'm not sure. It's around 2,000 maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the house existed in that form when you purchased it, correct?
Yeah.
You've done no modifications of the house. The house existed. Does the house have parking?
Yeah. We got the garage and the back has the driveway and four parking. And front it's the street. And back has a street too, the parking.
Okay. So, describe the neighboring uses. Are the neighbors?
Neighbor now, the next door, they just build a brand new apartment, like
So-
6 apartments.
So there's apartments next door.
Yeah.
What else is in the neighborhood?
Another one is, I think it's a rental single house too. I don't know, it's a rental or they live by themselves. I'm not sure.
Okay. Is it your opinion that this would have any adverse impact on the community? Would this hurt the neighbors?
No, there's nothing to do with a neighbor. That's my house here.
Did you ever receive any complaints when the property was being operated with unrelated people? Did you ever receive any complaints from the neighbors?
No, because I always rent the people nice, quiet. Any problem, I just evicted them. I don't want to get any problems.
So that's all the questions I have. But
Do you have anybody living in the basement?
No.
Are there any dwelling units in the basement?
Yeah, there was a unit. There was a unit on the basement, and the inspector went there. They said they cannot live anymore. They cannot live anyone in the basement. So they want me. The basement, when I bought the house, the basement is the whole unit, has a kitchen, everything. So they asked me for remove all the kitchen things. So I already did. It's empty now. They go inspect it anytime. It's empty. Nobody live there. Only top.
So,
Yeah.
so if you got this, if this was approved,
Uh-huh.
you wouldn't put anybody in the basement
No.
without first having permits or approval?
No. I don't put anyone basement. Basement just for people, play around, or sometimes before I put a bed, I went there. Sometimes I stay over here. But the inspector said that you cannot have a bed in the basement, so I took it down.
no other questions? All right, ma'am. You can ask.
We're her supporters. That's what I thought.
All right, ma'am, is there anything else you want the board to consider? Any other evidence?
Yeah, because I just, I just want to know it's if any possible to go back before. If not, probably I just want to sell the house. Otherwise, it's too many problems. I can get approved. The inspector every year I got problem. Start now. I never had a problem before, but now every year they give me the problems. They say that you cannot get a certificate. You have to rent the one family only, like that. I don't know when they change it. They never give me letter or anything. They just, the Peggy Stephanie just say that.
Yeah, we understand.
Yeah, I just don't get it. I mean, there was, I rent doing the business since 2010. It's over 14 years now.
Was it used as a boarding house before 2010? Did your predecessor use it?
They call regular rent.
Yeah, so they
Yeah,
rent out unrelated
right.
people. Good. All right, thank you, ma'am. Unless you have anything else, or we're gonna deliberate and figure out what happens. So you're good?
Yeah, so we cannot.
No, we're going to go off
We
the
have to
record
go
and
talk.
deliberate about your appeal. and
Oh,
we'll be
okay.
back.
Yep, we'll be right back.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Oh, you have comment? Yeah. Okay, please approach the podium, please. Give your name and address.
My name is Yixin Bai,
Can you spell, please, for the,
Yisheng, last name Bai, Bai. I live in 108 Lois Lane in Easton. Okay. Here, what I try to point out is that she had already operated the house for 12 years as a regulated housing, but by one particular inspector, and when there or whoever in the office changed the status of this house, otherwise she wouldn't have any problem as a regulated housing. You know, a little background. She was a teacher for these dealers, casino dealers in New York. She bought the house because her student need a house when her student found a job with Sands Casino. They know each other. They were not related, but they signed one lease. And nothing wrong with it. They meet the regulated housing requirement. And she has been operating this business, rent out the business as a regulated housing, but the code office or inspector suddenly change the status. She's not asking for the variance here. She just tries to make sure there's a classification of her housing as a regulated housing, not a boarding housing, which was changed by the inspector of the coding office. Okay, that's all I want to say.
okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Okay.
I also have another property. I don't have a problem. It's the same, you know,
So right now,
we
we're
can't
Oh,
deal with
okay.
that right now. We
Ah,
can only
okay.
deal with this property.
All right, thank you.
Okay, we're gonna deliberate. We'll
Okay.
return.
All right.
going to go
Is this
back.
yours or Pete's?
So, back on the record. You can hear me anyway. If I can get a motion from the board, please?
Sure, I'd like to make a motion to deny the variance sought.
Second,
Okay, Dave.
Dr. Van Wert,
no, or yes,
Yes to deny.
yes to deny.
Mr. Schneck,
Yes.
Ms. Lee.
Yes.
All right, ma'am. So while the board has denied your zoning variance, nothing stops you from making a new application to the city.
Okay, what kind of new application?
So again, I mean, I can't give you any advice about that, but if you, for example, wanted to potentially rent to less people or something of that nature, nothing stops you from doing that. So with that, I think the board can adjourn.
Thank you.
So like I said, with the.
Motion to adjourn?
Let them adjourn.
I could make a motion to adjourn.
I second.
Yes.
Yes. Ms. Van Wert,
Yes.
Dr.
What did-
Van
what did
Wert,
you
Yes,
say?
yes,
I
yes,
didn't-
yes, yes, yes.
Dr. Van Wert, Mr. Schneck.
Yes.
Yes.
Ms. Lee.
Yes.
Meeting adjourned.
All right,
Thank
let
you.
Moira off the hook. So ma'am, you can come back up.